365 Sports.
Frazier adding more numbers, more yards to those. Oh, they don't have him yet. Look at Tommy Frazier. How many tackles can one man break? Touchdown.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Ward takes the snap. Play action. Drops. Looks. Pops out of the pocket. Runs to his left. Throws it downfield. It is caught by Dunn. He's got the first down to the 40. Down to the 50. Down the sideline to the 40. Down to the 30. He separates. He's to the 20. To the 10. To the 5. Touchdown. Florida State. Warwick got a third down. Unbelievable.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Burrow's got time, launching for the end zone, jump ball, touchdown, Terrence Marshall.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Touchdown for Russell, but only 14 of 29. He finds his number one target, number one, Corey Coleman, off to the races, touchdown.
Now here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
All right, here we go on this Tuesday afternoon. 365 Sports on the day that the NCAA men's tournament begins. We're going to break that down quite a bit today. And then, of course, we welcome back Craig Smoke, the birthday boy who is back with us today. Good morning, Craig. Did you have a nice, relaxing decompression time?
Yeah, it was nice to get a day off and just kind of relax a little bit. So, yeah, it was good to get away.
Paul Catalina to my left. I'm David Smoke. Emery Winter is here today. And also Garrett Ross running the mothership. And that was fun yesterday with Garrett showing us all the stadium pictures on his trip up and down the United States of America, up to Pennsylvania and back. So I've been saying this really for a long, long time. Now, I've always wondered this, and this came from some coaches I talked to even back when I moved into the area back in 2010, about why don't college football programs have scrimmages against other programs? Even more so, you have games in which this is how so-and-so makes money with their budget because they'll play a team and get paid $500,000 or even $1 million or $2 million to fill up a stadium. Deion Sanders, this is Deion on wanting somebody to come to Boulder for 3 days, kind of like a mini camp, like the Cowboys and the Rams or the Raiders or what they used to do, and even Cowboys and other teams would travel around the country during the training camp period to be able to hit somebody else, scrimmage somebody else, learn about somebody else and yourself. So Deion has this idea. To me, this is not new. This is something that makes sense. And Fran Brown then responded, hey, we will come to Boulder for 3 days, Fran Brown, Syracuse.
Yeah, I love the idea. And look, if it's going to be Colorado versus Syracuse, a team that you wouldn't schedule in your regular season or you don't have in your schedule, that's fun. We talked about it before the show. I also think it would be a great way to have your guarantee game for the FCS school. So instead of having your FCS school in the regular season, just have that event in the spring. Let's just use Texas, the state of Texas, as an example. Texas could play Tarleton. TCU could play SFA. Baylor could play Sam Houston. A&M could play Incarnate Word. Like, all these kind of things, and you can have it be a fun game. It's competitive. It's different. I'm all for it. I know that there's an injury component, but I've seen plenty of spring. I've seen guys' careers end in spring games before playing against their own team. So I don't think there's that much of a difference. It allows you to be competitive. It allows it allows some fun for your fans. Yeah, it's better than what they're doing now across the board for the most part.
Yeah, I think kudos to Fran Brown for being so enthusiastic and responding and being another guy along with Deion who is really taking this bull by the horns and trying to create something and make something happen. Obviously, a lot of people are keen on the idea of freshening things up and changing things up, and this is a solution, playing somebody different, scrimmaging against somebody different, or perhaps even doing a full-blown type of game. I don't know about all that, but I understand the sentiment. So I don't know. I guess everybody's kicking around ideas. We'll see where it all goes ultimately, but I think this is a nice start to trying to find new solutions to new problems, and kudos to Dion and Fran Brown for being so gung-ho and willing to go at each other and have some competition and not shy away from it, not be somebody who's wanting to not have a spring game because they're afraid of being watched by somebody or, being paranoid or whatever it is, even if those are valid concerns. These guys don't clearly care about that. They want to go out and play football and just get their teams better, which is what spring is supposed to be about. So I admire the willingness of both parties, and I know there's others that have similar ideas, so we'll see how many people get on board and whether or not this becomes, like everything else in college football, one idea gets put out there, and then all of a sudden it's the trendy thing and everybody does it. So it wouldn't be surprising if this is, deemed successful or a cool enough idea that everybody wants to jump on board and follow suit.
Yeah, it's a good idea. It is in this day and age with so much that has changed in the last 5 years. Why not look at something different, or why not look at other options? Again, I brought that up because just because I had an interview with it about it 12 years ago with 2 or 3 different college coaches, and all of them, especially those who were a part of the high school game at some point, they went, yeah, why not? High school teams in Texas get 2 scrimmages. Unless you're one of the schools that had spring drills or spring football, then you get 1. And it's right before the start of the year. It's always a pretty good idea. And so maybe that happens. And Fran Brown and Dion can get that done. That would be absolutely awesome.
Look, my idea for FSU, who's not having a spring game this year, would be easy. Like, there's a school right across town, Florida A&M. Make it the battle for Tallahassee. Have the bands out there, all that stuff. That to me would be a fun spring game. Do that every year. You don't even have to get creative with it. You just know that every year FAM and FSU are going to play in the spring game and make it a yearly event. It's a cross town, like it's a block party for Tallahassee essentially. I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, make some money out of it. You make money off of spring games. Most of the time, it's a pretty cheap ticket. Sometimes you just walk in the door.
I mean, it's a fun idea. I mean, they actually have to execute it, though. I don't think there's anything that's been put out there that says they'll be allowed to actually do something like this. But, Fran Brown says they'll come there for 3 days, and it sounds like a full-blown, like, kind of crossover training camp, mini camp type experience as you see in the NFL. And I think people have already taken the idea and ran with it to the point of now talking about, full-blown spring game contest and whatever. I mean, they got to get the first part of this out there before they go and do the rest of it. But it's good to see some excitement around it, and good to see people trying to be creative and come up with solutions to, problems, however big or small they may be. So, again, kudos to Dion for putting it out there, and to Fran Brown for quickly responding and being up for the challenge. And so we'll see if they actually get to, actually do something like this at some point.
I don't know if it's an NCAA rule. I don't know if there's any reason why you can't. You would think that this would have been thought of earlier, but maybe there's something that keeps people or teams or programs from doing this.
From Football Scoop article, it says the NCAA hasn't allowed spring exhibitions among teams, though they do allow preseason men's basketball, baseball, some other sports, but they haven't done that for football. So, again, that's why I'm saying they would have to get a little bit further than just saying we're going to do it and then they just do it. You got to actually, I think, probably go through some clearing tape to make sure that that's all on the up and up and that's doable for everybody and up to the rules and everything. But I don't see why they'd be too resistant to that, so we'll see.
All right, and one of the other things, of course, is you mentioned basketball. Remember how they started having these secret scrimmages? Like Baylor would play A&M, or Texas Tech would play Oklahoma State, or who? Maybe not that, but they were having these
secret Drew Boys scrimmage.
Now it's almost like commonplace. Everybody knows about it, and the word secret doesn't even need to be used anymore. So a couple of notes about the number 2, and then we're going to get a note to you about a number 3 seed as well. Let's first do the one from Ryan Hammer, Garrett, if you don't mind. Wild stat: no top 2 seed that started the season unranked has ever made it to the Final Four. Now, it's hard. There's 68 teams. It's hard to be the Final Four. Iowa State last year was a 2 seed. They were knocked out in the Sweet 16. In 2023, Marquette was a 2 seed, knocked out in the round of 32. In 2022, Arizona was a number 1 seed, and they were knocked out in the Sweet 16. And Alabama, a 2 seed in 21, they were knocked out in the Sweet 16. This year, Michigan State and St. John's are 2 seeds, and the question marks to the right of whether either one of them advances. The number of the number 1 seeds in NCAA tournament history, the record is somewhere in the neighborhood of like 100 and something and 2. But we have seen 1 seeds go down in recent years. But it's like whatever in 2. And then when you get to the number 2 seed, there are not a lot of losses with them either. But there's the number 2 seed. Let me add this one, Garrett, before we go to the next graphic. Evan Miyakawa will join us in about an hour on some of his thoughts about the tournament. There is a 42% chance that a 14 seed upsets a 3 seed this year. 42%. Most likely, he says, the culprit could be Troy, with a 20% chance of beating Kentucky. The probability much lower if Kentucky was fully healthy when they played. You know who the head coach is at Troy? I believe it's Scott Cross, who was at UT Arlington, had a good run there. Then all of a sudden they got rid of him. They haven't been good since, and now he's taking Troy to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I'm super interested to see how this goes down. You know, I read an article this morning from Brendan Marks of The Athletic about this might be the year where you don't pick upsets like the numbers are showing you and yada, yada, yada. Like, that would be a bummer. That would be a bummer. But I think when you start getting into the games, when you start getting into the moment, the matchups, this is where also those little nagging injuries that you're able to kind of hide,
right?
Because you have to play so many games and there's so much pressure, all of a sudden, pop up out of nowhere. This is where, you've got, a group of kids dreaming their whole lives about this moment and can catch a team napping because this is their 4th time, this might be your 4th time there, right? And you're playing a team that's their first time there, and you get, an Ali Faroukmanesh that just decides, hey, screw them. I'm shooting until there's zeros, right? Last year,
Who was that player again?
Oakland.
Yeah.
Ali Faroukmanesh. I'm not allowed to say his name in my house. I can say it here. I can't say it.
Okay.
I can't say it in my house.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the best part. And tonight's games and tomorrow's games, they're there, and it's part of the tournament. It doesn't quite have that, but it'll be interesting because tonight there's a team that is like one of those that everybody either loves or hates because of decisions made. Let's get to the regions of the tournament. Let's start with the number 1 seed in the South, Auburn. They open up against either Alabama State or St. Francis. This is the South reason. Now, there's a thought that Louisville as an 8 seed is underseeded. And yet again, Creighton, of course, is just a team. Watch out with Greg McDermott and what they do in the Blue Jays. That's a great game in the opening round. A&M and Yale. That'll be kind of fun to watch. Any games here other than what I just mentioned, and that's near the top of the bracket, that kind of sticks out to you as something of interest?
In the South bracket, let me pull up the.
It's up on the screen. Okay.
Glass. I mean,
okay.
It's
okay.
Be respectful of my struggles.
Okay.
I think Louisville Creighton's going to be a super interesting game in that one. I wanted this UC San Diego and Michigan. Michigan they're coached by Dusty May, who's fantastic. I watched them twice over the weekend. They are so boring right now. So boring. I just wonder if a team that runs and guns will be a problem for them, and that I can't tell you I've watched any of UC San Diego, but it seems to me that's what they do. And I am terribly worried about Texas A&M and Yale because I personally have watched this story before with Yale in Providence, Rhode Island, that ended with the best sarcastic quote in a press conference that I've ever heard from Torian Prince to a guy who is literally dressed like Captain Kangaroo. The guy gets up, he has a red sweater. He goes, how does Yale out-rebound Baylor?
It's a great question.
And, yeah, it is a good question. He should have asked it better of, why did you guys struggle on the rebounding today? What was, was there a guy who just you were surprised about? Something like that to give him a chance to answer the question and pay the other team a compliment. Instead, you just were so sarcastic and in his stupid red sweater. I mean, nobody saw him. If I really wish that you could see the other side of it, so you saw what I saw. And
you can't Google a picture of him?
I don't even know who he was.
Oh, okay.
I mean, some Providence guy. Yeah.
Well, so there's the South region. And Auburn, the number 1 seed, lost 3 of their last 4. Still, they were good. They were dominant for a long, long time. And they are the number 1. So that Louisville-Creighton game, that's just, again, with Louisville being really, really good. They were 18-2 in the ACC. Mm-hmm. Now, the ACC, we know, had like 4 teams. Some people say 4 because North Carolina should not be a part of that. But they have 5. But Creighton, and it's a fun. They knocked Baylor out. Was it last year?
2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Yeah. And, here's the thing, though, about whoever Louisville, Creighton, whoever comes out of that region eventually trying to play Auburn, can you stop, Auburn, I kind of felt watching them. They lost 3 of their last 4, but it meant everybody that they were playing, those games meant a little bit more in that moment. We've got to get this. A&M needed to get that win over Auburn to give them some forward momentum. They were still going to make the tournament, but they kind of in that moment needed a little bit more. I think that good luck stopping Janai Broome the rest of this month. Yeah. I mean, that's my assessment of that.
Yeah. So there's the South region. All right, let's go to the East. Number 1 seed, Duke. We got to go East first, Garrett. There we go, Duke. There are several notes today that I was looking at that they probably have, based on who all is in their region. Plus, Duke never seems to have to go out west if they're a number 1 seed. They're in their backyard. They earn that because they're probably right now overall the best team in the country. That's debatable, of course. But they open up with a win against American or Mount St. Mary's. That's a play-in game. The second round would be against Mississippi State or Baylor. This is an 8 and 9. The 9 seed more often than not beats the 8. Now, I don't know if that's the case this week, but that is what is the overall trend in NCAA tournament history, the 9 and the 8. This is like a flip them. That's why they're 8 and 9. And then they would get Baylor and or Mississippi State. We had a guest on yesterday to discuss Duke, and, it was John Gallagher. There's no way. Baylor would have to shoot 50% from threes to have a chance, if they even win their opening game against Mississippi State. Arizona down there open up against Akron. The Zips, they can shoot it. BYU and VCU. When I see VCU, I think of Shaka Smart's VCU, and they're not quite like who they are. Alabama, Robert Morris at the bottom, the number 2 seed. Crimson Tide just can score a lot. And so there's the East Regional with Duke. Wisconsin, I don't know if there's anybody in there except on the bottom half of that bracket that could take out Duke in the tournament. With all due respect to Arizona,
BYU and Wisconsin score enough that again, if Baylor is a threat in that regard, according to John Gallagher, at least to
then
whatever
BYU will be.
That BYU would be, and of course Wisconsin would be, because Wisconsin set school records for scoring.
That's not
year.
The way they used to play.
No. Bo Ryan was more of a four corners
They
guy.
were a 50-49. If Wisconsin and Virginia had met in the national championship game, what was that, in 19 or whatever? The final would have been 38-37 or something like that.
And both coaches have been like, man, what an exciting game.
What an incredible.
Yeah, what a great game. Everybody was in foul trouble. Like that's what I said. 4 fouls, everyone, at least. No, I think that Duke is just, not that the ACC was all that terribly deep, but they didn't have Cooper Flag. It didn't, if you told me that If you told me that Cooper Flagg if I didn't know he existed, and I just watched the last 2 games that Duke played, I would still think they were one of the best teams in the country.
You're talking about the win against North Carolina.
Yeah, like again, and then again, Louisville.
Louisville
on Saturday.
Yeah.
So like, if I didn't know that he existed, like if I just turned it on, I was like, man, like this Duke team's really good, then I would still think that they were going to win this.
Yeah,
win this region.
Yeah, they despite that, the last couple of games without him, and hopefully he's healthy.
I mean, Alabama can straight up and down score.
Yep.
Alabama cannot, and I know this kills Nate Oates, stop people from scoring. They're going to outscore you and outscore you and outscore you, which is why I think they're a little bit vulnerable to a team like BYU or Wisconsin later on in the tournament.
When Alabama and Auburn played, you knew it was going to be in the 90s, and I don't know if it was every time, but it just seemed like the way they played. The Midwest region with Big 12 champions back-to-back, the Houston Cougars and Kelvin Sampson. They open up against Southern Illinois Edwardsville. You have Gonzaga, who's kind of been under the radar. Remember, they opened the year up by winning by 30 or something against Baylor and beat their brains in. Georgia, that's an SEC team among all 14 of them. But Gonzaga is more of an unknown sleeping. Watch out for them this year than they have been in recent years because they've been so good. But there's a lot of talk about Gonzaga's been under the radar, and they're better than the 8 seed shows.
They probably are, although I mean, Georgia's good. I mean, that's such a weird thing. Mike White was at Florida just a few years ago, then left to take the Georgia job. In Florida, it's worked out for them, we'll say. But he's now gone into Georgia, and that's a team that's a little bit fun to watch. So that one, I think I'm leaning Georgia. I think they've got a little bit more horses than Gonzaga does this year. But Mark Few in March, it's hard to bet against him.
All right. So this next part of the Midwest region, the second level, there are 2 teams in here that you better watch yourself. One of them is McNeese State and Will Wade. LSU coach got caught up in that investigation. This guy next year is probably going to be coaching a Power 4 school somewhere. They're really good. McNeese State and Clemson, who knocked Baylor out last year, remember? And that's when the coach said, hey, this Big 12, #1 conference in America, and the ACC had a great run last year. That's a hell of a game in round 1 in the Midwest region.
Will Wade graduated from which university, Smokey?
I don't even know.
He's a Clemson grad.
Oh, okay.
He's a Clemson grad.
That's right. He mentioned something about when he hears the fight song, he's got to be careful not to.
He's a Clemson grad. I'm calling it right now. Will Wade beats Clemson in the first round, gets $1 million extra bucks out of NC State to be their next head coach.
That's a mean thing and the NCAA can be mean in a way that we think not because of NCAA investigations and how stubborn they are and how all the stuff we've seen in 5 years in college athletics is because the NCAA was so damn arrogant. But putting those 2 together is awesome. That is awesome. Purdue and High Point. Now, Purdue's the favorite. High Point this is a dangerous team. This is one of those teams, there are going to be 12 and 13 seeds that win the first round. So, Purdue and High Point, but that Clemson McNeese State, that is evil that they put those 2 together.
You're always searching for stories. I'm waiting for the day that Grand Canyon and Baylor meet in the tournament. And everybody's rubbing their hands.
They are in women's basketball.
Yeah. I mean, they do in men's basketball, and it's Bryce v. Scott. But I do I think that the bottom part of this bracket, like once you get High Point, they're on a roll, and this is their first ever NCAA tournament and all that. I would not hey, congratulations, you've got Matt Painter and Purdue on a little bit of a down year. Coming off of a national championship runner-up, maybe you get them. But I think the bottom of this part of the bracket is a little bit more chalk than the top part of it because outside of McNeese, like I said, I'm calling that one. I think, 8-9, like I said, I think Georgia wins, but that's not really – 8-9 upset. That's not really an upset. 8-9, you're essentially the same thing. 8 and 9 seeds have beaten 8 seeds more often in tournament history.
In that third part of the Midwest region, we got one more region after this. It'll be the West. Texas and Xavier in the opening round. That's a good matchup. Xavier of basketball, the Musketeers. That winner will play Illinois, Brad Underwood, and the Fighting Illini in what would be fun. That's got a bracket with Illinois is a big boy basketball school. Xavier's got basketball history. Texas has got some pretty good history, although this year they had to grind it out to get to where they are. And some people thought that maybe they shouldn't be in there either, but they are. Kentucky at the bottom of that against Troy, which is a Cinderella team. So I think Kentucky's just better than everybody there, but that could be fun. And then the next one, I look at these schools. Okay, UCLA's a brand name, but Tennessee, I think, walks right through the first couple of rounds with Wofford, and then eventually whoever wins UCLA and Utah State. Now, let's go to the West. Florida. They just hammered everybody in the SEC tournament, and they are red hot. UConn, Oklahoma. UConn, two-time defending champions, not who they have been. It's been a tough year. Dan Hurley has been fighting, scratching, and clawing, which is kind of who he is. They just haven't been able to put much together. And Oklahoma, another team, people are like, why are they in the tournament? I see a lot of this, and I've seen a lot of this the last couple of days. I've been people who have texted me or whatever and tweets. How come Oklahoma's a 9 seed? Don't always look at the seed of where the tournament people think you are. It's weird. Now, I just said more 9s beat 8s, so that would be Oklahoma has a chance, of course. But like retired stockbroker was asking me about why are some 16 seeds getting a first round, you have to do a play-in to get to 16, and some are already there. They slot this thing differently than if they just go 1 through 68. It's kind of weird. It's hard to explain, but that's an interesting game with UConn in Oklahoma. There's Bryce Drew at 13, Grand Canyon.
Look, Maryland's been very good this year. I'm going to call the upset in this one. I'll take Bryce Drew and Grand Canyon at least to get to the next day, to the round of 32. I don't like that matchup they would have, which would be Memphis, I think, although Colorado State can score a little bit. But I like what Penny Hardaway looks like he's finally doing what they paid him to do all that time.
It's been a rough,
at Memphis.
Been a rough couple of times.
But it does depend. Tyrese Hunter, they're at Memphis, a little banged up. How far they go probably depends on how healthy he is. Although I don't think they're going to go very far, Memphis, because eventually they'll have to play the dirty, disgusting Florida Gators. And because of that, a Sweet 16 run would be great, but it would end there for anybody who has to play Florida.
All right, the next part of that, Missouri-Drake. I'm going to take Drake in the first round against Missouri. Texas Tech and North Carolina-Wilmington. This is interesting with Grant McCaslin. They are really good. They were not but, a win or two away from possibly getting a number 1 seed or a 2 seed. Have the win against Houston without JT Toppin for most of that game. They've won without some of their better players. Williams and McMillan have been hurt. Grant McCaslin said that they will be available, but to the extent of how much or how long they can play, that remains to be seen. But I'm still very much in the corner of Texas Tech. Then the next group down, teams that have been, Kansas. Who are they? All of a sudden, do they get to a tournament of this level and change who they've been most of this year, which has been inconsistent against Arkansas? Then St. John's and Rick Pitino against our good friend Chris Crutchfield and University of Nebraska in Omaha. So those are the matchups in the regions throughout the country in the tournament.
Yeah, I think that when you look at Self versus Calipari in the first round, that's another one of those like NCAA tournament things. Winner probably gets Rick Pitino. I love that for the first weekend. For basketball fans, I don't love it for my wife, who's going to be stressed out the whole time. But I think ultimately, I don't know Kansas can, they can score more than both these teams. So from a Big 12 perspective, they're probably more offensively gifted. They just don't have the chemistry that St. John's has right now. And we talked to Kevin Flaherty yesterday, and it's just that's the thing. He said that they're just not on the same page, or there's varying levels of interest and effort on this team, and they need to move on from this veteran squad that was two of them were there when they won a couple years ago. Hunter Dickinson came in, and it's just we said John Gallagher even said, like, look, I've had 6-year guys. We just got to get the 6-year guys gone. Like, they just got to be gone because they're progress stopping. And look, it would not surprise me to see Kansas get hot, especially when you got a guy like Hunter Dickinson. Big guys make a bigger difference in March than they do a lot of times during the season. But, Tech is in this region. And again, I think it's Florida and Tech in the Elite Eight. But I don't see – it's hard for me to say this out loud. After we've gone through all this, I think Florida's the best team in the country, and I think they're going to win it. I
just filled out my bracket. And this is bad because I didn't look at the seeds. I looked at the games. And I have all the number 1 seeds getting to the Final Four, which is so disgusting. So I've got to change that. I really wasn't looking at the seeds. I was looking at Auburn, Florida, Duke, and Houston. But I have to change that. I can't just go with all the number 1 seeds. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to let that happen. That would be – is that fair, Garrett, for me to do that?
I mean, it's fair, but it's kind of a cop-out.
No, I know.
You don't want to do that.
I got to have – do I need to have a 2 or 4 seed, or do I need one of those like Cinderella 9 seed or less? But I just think that there's like 7 teams that can win it. And those are 4. It's hard to pick against Auburn and Florida, Duke and Houston. It is. And
okay.
So
I am picking Auburn to lose in the Elite Eight to Michigan State.
Okay.
So I have 3 1s and a 2. So I'm obviously more plugged in.
You are.
Yes, you are. I'm just obviously more like I'm cooler than you because I rep the underdogs, like the 2 seed Michigan State.
The 2 seed against the world type mentality.
Yeah.
Izzo, of course, will get the calls as the head coach of the Spartans. Hey, we got a lot to get to. Evan Miyakawa will join us at 4 today. Tim Brando will join us on a couple of different things when we have him. One is he did a lot of Big Ten, remember? So his thoughts about the Big Ten teams in particular, and also the way the tournament is set up. And there's going to be something about the way the tournament and the brand names that got in that is just like the college football playoff that he'll have some opinions on. And one of the things that he warns everybody about, and this is for teams like even a Houston or maybe Tech or teams that grind, teams that get in your face, teams that in the conference are allowed to play more free when it comes to defense. But when you get into a tournament game like the NCAA tournament, you're going to have mixed match of officiating crews. And sometimes it's not as free and easy. Still good enough to keep winning, but that's something he'll talk about when he joins us today. Craig with Off the Radar. John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist. You got to talk about Stingley, right, with the huge contract he got. And Paul will have his top 5. One note, please hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. If you are a subscriber, would you please send our link or let people know about who we are every day, 3 until 6. And one more thing, we'll be in Frisco tomorrow and also on Thursday for Big 12 Pro Days. We have been told that we will get the commissioner and Brett Yormark to join us like he has on all the events we've ever covered when he's been there, and then also some players along the way as well. Craig Smoke and Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoke, and this is 365 Sports.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Attention Central Texas. The Jeep Celebration event is happening now at Allen Samuels in Waco. Drive home a legendary 2024 Jeep Wrangler, Sahara, Rubicon, or Grand Cherokee, saving 20% off MSRP. Or save a whopping $13,000 on a 2024 Jeep Grand Wagoneer. Prefer low financing? Get 3.9% for 72 months. But hurry, these deals won't last long. Hurry to Allen Samuels in Waco, where we always say,
come by, let's be friends.
Protect all Texans.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
We are back as this first hour is winding down. Garrett, before we get to the Louisville schedule, just a quick note. Do you have what I sent you when it came to the night's games, the play-in games tonight? So there are two, what you call those play-in games. St. Francis, Pennsylvania, Alabama State won. And then North Carolina, San Diego State's pretty juicy. And again, when retired stockbroker asked me about 16 seeds and how come some of them, you're having 2 11s play here. It's about slotted. North Carolina was the last team in the tournament from what it seemed like, but they're an 11 seed, but they're playing an extra game, and they'll play San Diego State. Those are the first 2 games tonight. Now, speaking of games, it's a great idea that we had, 3 weeks ago or so, is looking at every team in the Big 12 and their conference schedule, their overall schedule. We're in the ACC early on. Louisville, the Cardinals, and here's Craig.
Yeah, it's time to take a look at Louisville as we've been at this for a few weeks now. Big 12 now in the midst of the ACC, and we'll go around most of the rest of the country before all is said and done, and more of just to look at the schedule than anything else. But looking at Louisville based off of last year, 9-4 Sun Bowl champions, and overall pretty good season, although still a handful of teams in front of them in the ACC. Finished behind teams like SMU and Clemson, Miami, Syracuse, Duke, and then eventually found them right there in the same spot as a Georgia Tech. So not quite in the middle of the pack, but leaning between the middle and the top of the pack, somewhere right there. So what can Louisville do now in year 3 under Jeff Brom? That is the big question, and they do lose a couple of big-time players. Ashton Gelati will be gone to the NFL draft. Tyler Shuck, who actually had a nice year, especially with all the questions about his health. He is now off to the NFL draft as well. Ja'Cory Brooks, their big-time wide receivers, gone to the NFL draft. So they're going to be missing some talent like most teams, but just schedule-wise, on paper, here's what Louisville is looking at in 2025, as they look to perhaps get to 10 wins. So starting off on Saturday, August the 30th, it will be the Eastern Kentucky Colonels opening up the season. They're at home for the Cardinals on that opening Saturday. That will be followed by, on September the 6th, James Madison rolling in for the second of 4 non-conference games. And then on Saturday, September the 13th, it is already time for their first bye week. So 2 games and then a bye week for Louisville on this schedule. They continue non-conference play on Saturday, September the 20th, as they'll take on the Bowling Green Falcons. And we can stop right there because that's the first month of the season. That's also 3 of their 4 non-conference games that they have on the schedule. So, yeah, Eastern Kentucky, James Madison, bye week, and then Bowling Green, the schedule for Louisville through the first 4 weeks.
Yeah, this is a nice, easy early schedule for them. At least the first 4 weeks, the Eastern Kentucky, James Madison, Bowling Green. Although Bowling Green can be scary, but
James Madison can be scary.
James Madison, yeah, it's true. Bowling Green rolling out Eddie George, so we'll see how that affects them right now. Yeah, James Madison can be scary, so they should be 3-0, but there are 2 big trap games right here in the middle of the schedule.
Yeah, James Madison finishing 9-4 last year, so that's a team that's been able to very quickly acclimate to another level and making that jump up, and not always easy to do, but they've made it look a lot easier than people probably expected or anticipated. But there you go with the first part of that schedule. So closing out the month of September, they will have their 4th game, and it will be the opener of conference play as they will travel to Pitt to take on the Panthers, as that is one of the teams they will be seeing. I'll get to who they will not be seeing when it comes to ACC play once I get to the end here, but opening conference play on September the 27th. So Pitt first, then the following week it'll be Virginia at home. That Pitt game, their first road test of the year, and so they'll have played 3 games and then had a bye week before they actually hit the road. So that's pretty nice. All 4 of their non-conference games, which the 4th and final ones at the very end of the year, all of them at home. Also should mention 8 home games for Louisville this year as well. So it's a very favorable schedule in that regard. But this first trip to Pitt, then the following weekend, it'll be the Virginia Cavaliers back at home at L&N Stadium. So there you go, that second chunk. Bowling Green, Pitt to open conference play on the road, Virginia to open conference play at home, and then your second and final bye week there on October the 11th. So that sets them up to have 7 consecutive games to close the schedule. So 2 games bye week, 3 games bye week, and then they are going to have a chunk, but it'll be, Bowling Green, Pitt, Virginia there in that second window.
If things go absolutely chalk here for Louisville, they should be no worse than 5-1. They should be no worse than 5-1. Miller Moss is the quarterback now. I think that's an upgrade over the last 2 years with Jack Plummer and even Tyler Shuck, who's getting a lot of love right now. I think that Miller Moss, an upgrade. He'll do well in that system with Jeff Brom. Jeff needs to recruit and develop a quarterback, though, because his 1-year transfer portal thing is not totally sustainable, but he's that good of a quarterback coach that it's worked. But Pitt here is the team that the only team they could lose to on paper. Now, Virginia does roll out Chandler Morris at his 4th school, and we'll see how that works out in Tony Elliott's scheme. But I think they should be 5-1.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned Miller Moss, and I intended to. It's written right here in my notes. As far as that's who they went and got to replace Tyler Shuck. I mentioned Tyler Shuck and Ja'Cory Brooks and Gelati and all those guys leaving, but didn't mention Miller Moss as far as being the big addition. But, yeah, he comes over from USC, so we'll see what he's able to do. And, you mentioned the Chandler Morris. He'll definitely be a potential upgrade, but, man, that's so ridiculous. 4 schools. I mean, that's just so – like, you really stop and think about it. It's just like, how ridiculous is that, honestly?
I do it all the time.
4 schools. I mean,
I do.
And he's not the only one, so I'm not trying to bog down on him. But, like, when you really just stop and press pause and, like, think about it for just a second, you're just like, this is ridiculous.
Well, and the thing about him in particular is that last year he had a fantastic year at North Texas.
Yeah.
It was a perfect spot for him. There's, like, and no offense to Eric Morris and North Texas, but he's about to jump into a world where his schedule is going to be harder, and a Virginia team that struggled for a long time now, as opposed to a place that was a perfect fit for him. I think if you're talking about, wanting to maximize your last year, I think he made a mistake.
Yeah, potentially. We will see on that. But yeah, I think it's silly that it's been that much moving around. And I'm with you. When I saw him move after having a good year, I was like, really, dude? Like, you found a spot
getting beat out.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
it just.
I get transferring after you get beat out and trying to find the spot. You found the spot.
Yeah, no, and listen, you're right. In North Texas, it's not like it. I didn't like to see him leave because he was so successful. Plus, North Texas, of course, that's just a constant roster change. Don't forget now, in week 2, when they have that James Madison game, that can be a little dicey because what they did to North Carolina last year, and they're good. But I do think Louisville should have plenty of firepower for that one.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be tested early a little bit, but I didn't mean to get off course on Chandler Morris all that much. But I do think that Miller Moss is a nice pickup for Louisville.
No doubt.
Anyways, getting to the end of the schedule in that 7-game stint to close it out on Friday, October the 17th. After that second bye week, they'll have the first of what will be 2 Friday games. It'll be on the road, October 17th, Friday night against the Miami Hurricanes to continue ACC play. So that is following their bye week. They'll have 2 weeks to prepare for that one. Then it is back home, October the 25th, Saturday, Boston College. Following week, another Saturday, November the 1st, back at a road site there, one of their only 4 road games, and it will be Lane Stadium to take on the Virginia Tech Hokies. Then Saturday, November the 8th, back home, take on the Cal Golden Bears. They don't have Stanford on the schedule. I'll get to the other standouts they don't have on the schedule, but they do have Cal, yet it's at home, so no Stanford, and Cal at home means no cross-country West Coast road trip like some of the other ACC teams will have to take if you take travel into consideration or worry about that. Not a worry here for Louisville. So Cal at home. Then it's Clemson on Friday, November the 14th. So their 2 Friday games are at Miami and then home against Clemson. They're over the span of a month. So that's pretty interesting to have those 2 Friday games. So Friday, November the 14th, it'll be Clemson. Then the following week, you'll have an extra day, 8 days to prepare for a road trip to Dallas. So that is not the West Coast by any means. You're only going halfway across the country, but that is their big road trip of the 4 they have to take, is going over to Dallas. So SMU there on the 22nd. So back-to-back games against the 2 teams who played for the ACC championship last year in Clemson and SMU. And then finally they close it out on Saturday, November the 29th at home against the SEC's Kentucky Wildcats. Of course, they're arch rivals, so that 4th non-con game, because that's what the ACC does along with the SEC. They have the 4 non-con games, that 4th one there at the end of the season against Kentucky. So their second stretch, Miami on the road on Friday night, Boston College at home, Virginia Tech on the road, Cal at home, Clemson at home on a Friday night, SMU on the road, and then Kentucky at home. So they could be 4-1 or 5-0 or whatever, but that last stretch of the schedule is going to be something else for Jeff Brom and Louisville potentially.
Yeah, I'm gonna think that Miami is going to be tough at Hard Rock. Carson Beck, who we didn't talk about, might be a broken-hearted man. We don't know.
I saw that.
Yeah, he and Haley Cavender have reported she's scrubbed him from her socials.
Oh,
so I mean that's
terrible.
That's a tough thing.
I can't believe we're even doing the show today.
It's a tough thing. I mean, yeah.
Let me tell you something. He's the loser in this deal.
yeah, he can cry in his Lambo. That's for sure. But then at Lane Stadium is never an easy place to play. Virginia Tech, by this point of the year, is going to be one of two things based on how they're entering with Brent Pry. They're going to be confident in the fact that what they're doing is working, or the fans will have turned on him and they'll want a new head coach again because they haven't felt right since Frank Beamer. They're in Blacksburg. Clemson, going to be really tough. ACC favorite as it stands right now. And then SMU, probably the other ACC favorite as it stands right now at Gerald Ford Stadium in Dallas. That's going to be tough. And curious to see Brock Vandegrift, and by the end of the year, how much he's taken to that offense at Kentucky in that rivalry game on Thanksgiving weekend. But Clemson and SMU back-to-back before a big rivalry game, that's as tough of a 3-game stretch as you can probably get. And I don't know how good Kentucky's going to be. We don't know how good any of these teams are going to be, but just looking at it schedule-wise where you have – the two teams that played in the ACC title game and your biggest rival the last 3 weeks, that's 3 high-pressure situations for Jeff Brom in a row.
Clemson, we know, turned the corner, it appears, won ACC and then, of course, went to the playoff, lost to Texas. But SMU's on and up. Kentucky's just solid. I don't know if it's 9-4 solid or they.
I mean, Mark Stoops might be fired at this point for all we know.
Yeah, he needs to win. He needs to win, but it still seems to be a team in Kentucky. Now, last year was a disaster at 4-8. Is that not the first time they've kind of dropped in the last? I don't have the schedules in front of me the last 5 years, but they have been what seemed to be pretty competitive in that conference. If you lose a couple of games or a couple other teams get to be pretty good, you fall in a hurry. UK's logo almost looks like Houston. It's like almost identical other than the letters of the H and the K. Craig, anything else?
So the 2 Friday games there, tough close to the schedule, but they do get 8 home games, so that's nice. 4 road games, none of them too terribly far. I mean, the trip to Dallas, besides that, you're going to Miami, which I know is a lengthy trip, but 2 Blacksburg and 2 Pittsburgh. So there's your 4 road trips that you can schedule around. And also who you don't play on here. You don't play Florida State. You don't play North Carolina. You don't play Syracuse. You don't play Georgia Tech. You don't play Duke. You don't have to go to Stanford, as I mentioned earlier. So, I mean, I know Florida State was down last year, but if you're looking at the top of this, the standings last year and then the ones who have the money or maybe the sway to be a little bit better this year, like a Florida State or perhaps a North Carolina, that's probably good. You don't play Fran Brown. You don't play Manny Diaz Blue Devils. You don't play Georgia Tech and Haynes King. Florida State if they bounce. So that's a handful of teams that could be beneficial to not face, and certainly not having to go all the way to Palo Alto is a nice thing as well. So tough third stretch of the season, especially those last 3 or so games, but Louisville won 9 games last year, and I think, being in the ballpark of that's not entirely off the table, but certainly if they get off course early on, it could be a tough road or a tough hole to dig out of, but it does seem very manageable early, so I don't think that'll be a problem for them.
Kentucky has started every year, but the last year when they opened up at 1-2, they have gone 4-0, 6-0, and 5-0 to start the year, with some of those even being wins within the SEC, but Louisville spanked their ass last year, 41-14, so Jeff Brom turned the corner. In fact, their last 2 games, they got beat up pretty good by Texas and then Louisville to close out the season. All right, Craig, that it? All right, by the way, we will have Evan Miyakawa coming up next on all his analytics, data, his sleepers based on history and teams. It's pretty amazing. We started out, we knew him when he was Emery's age. When he was just a young pup.
He still feels like he's Emery's
and he's still pretty young, but he has everything broken down. He has become someone that all the people around the country now lean on with some of his analytics and some of his stats and some of his grids, etc. Does a great job with that, and we're the ones that were lucky enough to get to know him very early on when he was, of course, coming out of college. When we come back, Evan Miyakawa, also Tim Brando, John McClain, the top 5 on Off the Radar, and this is 365 Sports. Baylor on the road. The Baylor alumni fan engagement, Doug Furch and also Paul Thorpe will be there where Baylor is at the team hotel, setting up any kind of activities, walking out as teams are leaving, going to the bus to go play in a game. They'll be there, the Baylor donors and alums. If you want to be a part of that, contact Baylor University with Doug Furch or Paul Thorpe, the Baylor alumni fan engagement on the road if you want to be there too, or if you can't make it to where Baylor is opening up in that first round, when they play, where you are, what city you're in, if you want to have a watch party at a local restaurant, sports bar, whatever, get in touch with Doug and Paul. They'll help spread the word for you. Maybe it's in D.C. or maybe it's in Salt Lake City or possibly Chicago. The Baylor Alumni Fan Engagement, 365 Sports.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Don's Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don's Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Evan Miyakawa, evanmia.com. The king of basketball numbers. I'm just going to tell you right now, nobody does it like Evan. Evan, I read an article earlier today from Brendan Marks from The Athletic that says that this year is the chalkiest year possible because that's what the data says. Please tell me that's not true.
Well, I think it's chalky from the sense that we're most likely to see a 1 seed or a 2 seed winning the national title or making a Final Four this year. The crop of 1 seeds this year is very, very dominant. Every single one of them, according to my tournament simulations, has at least a 15% chance of winning the title game. And you add that up, that's about 70% chance that we're going to see a 1 seed winning the whole thing. They all have a relatively straightforward path to a Final Four. Now, I think it's very possibly we're going to see some first-round upsets in the 5-12, 6-11, 7-10 games, that kind of thing. But in terms of seeing like major Final Four upset potential with what we had a couple years ago with Florida Atlantic and Miami and that kind of year, I just don't really think that's as likely in the cards this year, just because the top is so dominant. There's probably 4 or 5 teams this year who have really separated themselves, and then the teams that would really compete with those are also pretty close to the level. You're looking at teams like St. John's and Michigan State and Tennessee, who are not the title favorites but still have a chance of doing well. And then there's a pretty large gap to the rest of the teams. So I think we could see some early chaos. But when it comes to the Final Four, I think this could be one of the more chalky Final Fours we've seen.
Yeah, because, we were talking about Duke earlier, Evan. If you told me, like if I didn't know that Cooper Flagg existed and I turned on Duke in the ACC tournament after he was out with no sound on so I couldn't hear them talking about how Cooper Flagg was not there constantly, I would think that they were one of the best teams in the country without him. So that does lead to do they even need him this first weekend is a huge question.
I do not think Duke needs him. They'll be totally fine without him in their first game, and they should be totally fine without him against either Baylor or Mississippi State. I think that they're that good. Now, I do think there is, though, a certain amount of if Cooper Flagg really is close to being available, it's a morale boost for your team to even just let him play a little bit in that first weekend, just because then it's basically like, hey, we're not really concerned about this going into the Sweet 16. And two, there can be just a little bit of a mentality thing where, if he hasn't played at all, even though he could, and then they're only up 3 points with 4 minutes to go in their second round game, they could be thinking maybe we should be playing Cooper Flagg. So I think there's almost a mentality thing that they have to deal with too. But obviously you need to prioritize his health, because if this team really is going to be the front runner to win the national title, which I believe they are, they do need Cooper Flagg healthy. And so you don't want to risk him early if there really is any concern that he's not going to, not re-injure himself.
So and just looking at that part of the bracket, there are some teams. Look, if Baylor gets through, they can score at their peak, right? Not sure Baylor's healthy enough to do that. I think that's the big question about Baylor. Arizona can score if they get through. Again, BYU scores a ton. Wisconsin scores a ton. Alabama scores a ton. But none of them have the defensive metrics that Duke does, do they?
No, Duke's defense is phenomenal this year. I think they're probably one of the top 3 or 4 defensive teams in the country. They're certainly the most athletic team in the country, and the way that they are able to physically and athletically stop you from doing what you want to do, I don't think is matched by any other team. There are certainly some other teams like Houston and St. John's whose defenses are so stingy, and they're just going to get at you for 40 minutes a game. But Duke's athleticism is a different kind of beast. And so in that region, they're really the only big team in that region who poses that kind of defensive threat. Like you mentioned, Bama's more of an offensive team than a defensive team. They can score in the 90s, but they've had struggles giving up points this year. Wisconsin, similar thing. Arizona, again, more of an offensive team. I think they're pretty balanced this year. But like you mentioned, there's really not another defense in that East region that really stacks up with Duke's.
Let's move down to the Midwest. And Houston, very, very good on both sides of it. I mean, they score, they play defense. Juwan Roberts has been hurt, but he'll probably play at least some maybe he doesn't play the first weekend. I'm not sure that they totally need him to either. Kind of not in the same level as Cooper Flagg, but they showed that, through the Big 12 tournament, he wasn't there and they won.
Yeah, I mean, Houston is the kind of team that does not overly rely on one player. And if you have a player out, if there's any team that can overcome it, it's Houston. Juwan Roberts obviously is a key cog for this team. Not only is he one of the best players on this team, he's by far the veteran leader on this team. He's been around for a really long time. He is Houston DNA. I know in their senior night game, he was the one player that caused Kelvin Sampson to cry, just because Juwan Roberts means so much to him in that program. But yeah, honestly, if I'm scouting Houston and I'm not sure that Juwan Roberts is available, it does not change anything about how I prep for that game or what I'm expecting from Houston, because their entire team, from player 1 down to player 8 or 9, they all play with the exact same intensity, and they are a collective unit that is very, very strong. So yes, obviously it would hurt Houston if Juwan Roberts is not available in the first couple games. I still think he probably will be to a certain extent, but even if he's not, I'm not overly concerned that it's going to massively change their outlook. Honestly, their biggest test, though, is a potential second-round game against Gonzaga. Gonzaga, as some people know, is an analytical metrics darling. They're a top 10 team according to my site. Really, really tough draw, honestly, for both Houston and Gonzaga to be paired with each other in that second-round game, because Houston, their toughest game on their path to the Final Four could be that second-round game. So that might change a little bit of the urgency for Juwan Roberts' injury situation, just based on if he's available for that potential matchup or not.
Yeah, Evan, I've just submitted my bracket in the challenge, and with some media guys from Radio Row, and I and you know this about me, you know my alma mater is Florida State. I don't see anybody getting the Gators right now. It's hard because they're deep, and Todd Golden has this ridiculously good offense. But they do, like, of all the teams that, you go through and look, it appears to me that they might have the toughest go of it when you've got St. John's and Texas Tech as your 2 and 3 seed.
Yeah, I think that region, the West region, is the toughest region, really, for any of those top Final Four contenders in that area. The thing with Florida is, if you looked even a couple months ago, I wouldn't have necessarily put them in the firm title favorite tier, but they have definitely risen to that. I think they have the third best odds to win the whole thing of any team in the country, according to my simulations. But like you said, there are some really tough teams. I've heard some people argue that of all the 2 seeds, St. John's right now is the one that you want to face the least. So a Florida-St. John's game, that's a pretty tough draw for Florida. And then, Texas Tech at times this year has been one of the top 6 or 7 teams in the country. They're dealing with a little bit of an injury bug right now. But if they were to get through the first weekend or two, they would be very strong opponent. Maryland is according to my team ratings, one of the strongest non-top 3 seeds we have in the field, and they have the best chances of making a Final Four of any team outside those top 3 seed lines. So I think that's a tough matchup. So yeah, I think their road is tough. I still think they are definitely the overwhelming favorite or most likely team from that region to get to a Final Four, but the path there is certainly not as easy as it could have been for them in other regions. And I think I would just caution people a little bit. We often really track this kind of momentum going into the tournament. Florida is definitely one of these teams where they have just been absolutely dominant. I don't know if you could argue there's been a better team in the country heading into the tournament than Florida right now. So maybe that's going to carry them all the way to a Final Four, but you also have to remember Todd Golden has not won a single NCAA tournament game. So this is a new territory for him and for his players, even though he does have some veterans like Elijah Martin who have been there before. This is going to be kind of a new territory for the Florida Gators.
They have, and they've just come through. I mean, look, Evan, they've had a weird year. I mean, earlier in the year that you thought that maybe Todd Golden was going to get suspended at least because there was a Title IX investigation into him. That gets cleared, and they just went after that. It's like for him in particular, I guess a weight was lifted, and they just ran with it. And watching them in the SEC tournament this last week, and what was the deepest league in the country this year, was just kind of a revelation.
Yeah, it's been honestly astounding that they were able to overcome all of that uncertainty around their camp and around what was happening with their head coach, and that they were still able to just continue to just bull through the SEC. And they have arguably the most impressive win in the country on the road at Auburn. They handled them comfortably in that game. So they've shown that they can beat anyway. They can handle anybody. Obviously, playing in the SEC is going to prepare you for anyone that you would face in the tournament. So I don't really think there's going to be any surprises for this team. I will say that over the course of the season, this is something they've gotten better at recently, which I really think has elevated them to another tier. But early in the season, the first half of the season or so, Florida was one of the most volatile teams in the country from game to game in terms of having good performances and bad performances. They cleaned that up a little bit recently, but that's still a trend that I'm monitoring for this team because on their best night, they can beat anyone. On their worst night, they have struggled. So we've not seen that recently. And so hopefully if you're a Florida Gator fan, you're hoping that continues. But we'll see what happens.
I want to stay in this bracket for a second on Kansas, Arkansas, St. John's, Omaha, that little part of it. Kansas, I feel like they match up very well against Arkansas. I think that's a really good matchup for them. Like as a team that's not been themselves all year long, or actually for the last 2 years, this is, to me, in a 7-10, probably maybe the best they could have hoped for, in that you also get a team with expectations. I think it'd be much more dangerous for them to play a team like Utah State or New Mexico, just because those are the teams that kind of jump up and get you, as where I don't think there'll be surprises with Arkansas. And ultimately, more than likely, it's a matchup against Rick Pitino for either of them. How do you see that part of the bracket working out?
Yeah, that's a great point about, the fact that Kansas, not only is this matchup favorable for them, but I also think going into this game, it's not just going to be about, is Kansas going to, fumble the bag here? Because Arkansas limped into the tournament. A couple weeks ago, we didn't think this team was heading to the tournament. They've turned it around and have been good. But, it's John Calipari in his first year at Arkansas, largely been a disappointment compared to the roster talent. They've got arguably their best player coming back in Boogie Fland, but is that actually going to be a good thing for Arkansas because he's not been playing for a while and he's a freshman? I don't know. So I think that takes a little bit of the pressure off of Kansas because it's going to be as much about Arkansas in this game as Kansas. And so I think maybe Kansas is going to feel a little bit like they can just play with a chip on their shoulder and just take them to town here. I do have Kansas favored comfortably in that game. My model gives them a 71% chance of winning, 6-point favorite. So I really like Kansas. I've been a Kansas backer for most of the season relative to where everyone else has been on them. I think their roster talent is really good, and I think that their coach obviously has a proven track record. And oftentimes teams like this who were highly rated in the preseason, let's remember Kansas was preseason number 1 in the AP poll. They often, if they have disappointing regular seasons, can often kind of rebound and revert back towards preseason expectation in the tournament. Kansas exactly fits the bill for that. So I expect them to beat Arkansas in that first game and then give St. John's a tough game in round 2. I still think, I'd pick St. John's to win that game, but I think Kansas is a pretty scary second-round opponent for any 2 seed.
I would look forward to a Tech and St. John's matchup if that happens. Now, look, Tech has got to get through Missouri or Drake. I'm picking Drake. I love Ben McCollum. That might be my emotional pick. Am I crazy there?
I think that I'm just kind of thinking about this now. Like, Missouri kind of was a Final Four sleeper pick even like a month ago, and they've been a lot more dicey down the stretch. And so, yeah, I think Drake definitely could have upset potential there for sure. I think Drake, they've basically been proving all season that they can punch above their weight. They have a bunch of guys who are D2 just a year ago. Their coach is maybe one of the best in this tournament based on what he's done with their roster. And, Dennis Gates for Missouri, this has been a great year for them. If you remember, they were winless in SEC play, if I remember correctly, last year, and they've been amazing this year. But sometimes teams like this who massively kind of, outperform expectations getting into the tournament can be a little bit lackluster. I think maybe an example of this last year would have been BYU under Mark Pope at the time, who had a roster last year that was pretty underwhelming, but they were really, really good in Big 12 play. They made the tournament. They lost the first game against Duquesne. So maybe Missouri fits the bill here. And if you're thinking about any sort of plucky mid-major who has a proven player in Bennett Sturtz, has a great coach, and has a team that's just going to fight you really hard, that's Drake for sure. So I think there's upset potential there. And then, yeah, I would probably pick Texas Tech to beat the winner of that game either way.
So in the South region, Auburn has not been playing well the last week, but they're still, Janai Broome, they're amazing. Like, they've been amazing all year. They maybe hit their cold streak at the right time. I think about Baylor in 2021, their coldest part of the year. Of course, it was coming off of the entire team being stricken with COVID, but they came through the best then. So with this region, to me, I don't know who can ultimately get Auburn and Michigan State, and then coin flip on that game, to me, in my opinion, when it comes down to it.
Yeah, I think Auburn's path at least to Elite Eight is pretty straightforward. And I think really the MO for this team all year has been, let's just play our dudes and beat up on people and have some fun. And I think that's really what took people by surprise the first 2 to 3 months of the season, and when they were like clearly the best team in the country. And I think they've just let a little bit of that go recently, but they certainly are still capable of that. They have a healthy team. There's a lot of other teams that you can't say that about right now who are title favorites coming into the tournament with injury concerns. They're healthy. They have arguably the best player in Janai Broome. And I think when it's like, hey, everything is on the line here, I really think, honestly, when you look at it, a lot of it is motivation. This team won the SEC by multiple games. That was really what they were pushing for. Once they achieved that, they were kind of lackluster in their last, they lost their last, 3 of their last 4 games. But I think we shouldn't overthink this. I think Auburn is still one of the biggest threats to win the title. I think they're the best team in this region. I'm picking them to a Final Four here, partly because I think their path is relatively easy. I'm not particularly scared of a Sweet 16 matchup against Michigan or Texas A&M. It's possible, one or both of those teams don't even make it there. Michigan State obviously will be a big test, but I still think I would have Auburn as a comfortable favorite in that game. So I don't think you should overthink this. Auburn has the dudes. They've proven that when they want to lock in, they're better than anyone in the country, arguably. And so I think we're going to see a bit of a rebound for this team now that they kind of know, like, hey, we really need to whip it into shape for this tournament.
You mentioned A&M and Michigan. UC San Diego on a ridiculous heater. And watching the selection show the other day, all 4 of the guys in the room really love Yale and don't like A&M. I did watch that Michigan game the other day, and snooze fest though it was, Dusty May looks like he's got their arrow pointed up. I don't even think they're playing Dusty May basketball yet. He's just making the best of what the situation is. But with A&M and Yale, Evan, I lived this in Providence, Rhode Island a decade ago. I saw it happen. Yale is just – they're scary. Is A&M on as high alert as everybody is making it seem right now?
I certainly think there's an upset potential here in this game. The thing about Yale is they've already proven they can do this. They did this last year in the first round in about the same kind of matchup against Auburn, who was one of the strongest teams in the tournament heading in. Analytically, Auburn was a top 5 team in the country, and Yale beat them in the first round last year. And they've got, one of their stars, John Polikides, is still on this team. And so, yeah, I think that there's definitely upset potential here. And the thing with A&M is their offense at times this year has really struggled. They're a very, very good rebounding team. But in terms of making shots, in terms of making threes, it's sometimes a bit of a struggle for them. And, we've seen a lot of inconsistency from this A&M team. If A&M shows up and competes, they're probably going to beat Yale by 20. But there's a good chance that A&M just doesn't have a great night, because we've seen that this season, and it's a really close game, and potentially Yale wins this. So I definitely think there's a chance Yale can upset Texas A&M here.
How vulnerable is Iowa State with their injuries?
I would say fairly vulnerable, but the thing is that Iowa State, even with Keyshawn Gilbert in the lineup, has been Gilbert has not been himself for the last month or two. So taking him out of the lineup, it's not actually really that big of an impact based on what we've already seen recently. Iowa State, the first half of this season, was one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the country. They were very, very good. The second half of the season has not been the same. They've kind of rebounded a little bit recently. They've been better, but certainly not in that title favorite, elite status. So I think for me, sometimes people can overreact to injury news. I think Keyshawn Gilbert has arguably been one of their best players this season, if not their best, but we've not seen the best from him recently. He's out for the tournament. That's obviously a big loss for them, but they've been kind of already dealing with injuries like this for the second half of the season anyway. And so I think that Iowa State, I honestly think people are probably getting out on them a little bit too much. And I certainly think there's a chance we look up and they're still in the Final Four. So, I think they're stronger. They've shown that they are a really strong team at times this year. And I certainly think they still have the mentality to do it. They still have the guys to do it. It's going to be tough, obviously. But I don't think that they're a super, super weak 3 seed by any means.
Okay, so a couple rapid fire things. Who is your favorite double-digit seed?
My favorite double-digit seed is VCU, hands down. I think it's a coin flip in that first game, 11-seed VCU versus 6-seed BYU. VCU rates as a top 20 team in the predictive metrics right now, according to my website, and that's very similar to BYU. BYU, obviously one of the hottest teams coming into the tournament, but VCU has a very, very specific style of play that's going to be really tough to match up against. And they have one of the best, most impactful players in the country in Max Shulga, who's a really good three-point shooter. And VCU has been one of these teams that if they, their strength of their team is much better than their resume. They had to win the Atlantic 10 tournament to secure their bid in the tournament here. But VCU, I think, is my favorite double-digit seed with a chance of making it to a Sweet 16 or an Elite 8.
Okay, did the committee get it right vis-a-vis West Virginia and North Carolina?
I'm not super mad about North Carolina being in the field.
Mm-hmm.
According to my resume quality metrics, it was pretty much borderline on the side of them being in. But West Virginia getting left out of the tournament is absolutely wrong. And so that really is where I take issue. You can pick your team that they should have been in over North Carolina, Xavier, whatever. But West Virginia deserved to be in this field. And all the explanation I've heard from the committee was basically saying, well, it's because Tucker DeVries is out. Tucker DeVries has been out since mid-December. Like, we've already seen that West Virginia can be a great team without him. That shouldn't matter at all. So I think that one was wrong.
And did they put too many SEC teams in?
Yes. I'm not super mad about it. But I think, getting Texas in the field was a little bit borderline. And so I just did not think that when we looked at this bracket, we would see 14. I thought we would see 13, and one of them who thought they might get in wouldn't. It's not super undeserved. This conference has been the best in the country. I think just purely weighting how good was your conference this year by number of NCAA tournament bids is a little bit weird, because that can kind of change depending on just like how many bubble caliber teams you have. So, we were looking at anywhere between 12 and 14 SEC teams for the last month, ended up with 14. So I do think it probably should have been one less, but, ultimately this conference earned it.
Evan Miyakawa, evanmiya.com. Please go to his website if you're a college basketball fan and you're not there. You're not really that much of a college basketball fan, in my opinion. You're still in AA ball if you're not on evanmiya.com. Evan, thank you so much. Always love when you hop on. And you've informed my bracket. I appreciate that because, listen, I'm a winner, and I don't lose at these things, despite what history will tell you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Always good to talk with you.
Evan Miyakawa. Craig Smokes off the radar is next.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
1, 2.
I'm in love with a man named Rudy. I'm okay with that. He knows exactly what I want. Keeps me coming back. Cooks breakfast, lunch, and dinner for me. Does the dishes too. I'm in love with a man named Rudy. Last name Barbecue. It sure is easy to fall in love with Rudy's tasty oak smoked barbecue.
Next in line.
This is 365 Sports.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing his time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
And welcome back into 365 Sports. Time for some Off the Radar as we continue on this Tuesday. rolling along, got Big 12 media days, not media days, I keep saying media days, but Big 12 Combine coming up over the next couple of days, and a bunch of Big 12 athletes, football stars, looking to make a name for themselves ahead of the draft and trying to maybe catch the attention of some of the scouts that will be in attendance. Should be a pretty good crop, but there are guys who have already been in the league now for a little while, or who are seeing some handsome paydays and are kind of that carrot out there dangling that a lot of the guys are going to be watching the next 2 days. They want to follow suit. They want to be the guys that are enjoying free agency right now. And so we've got some free agency to talk about. And let's start with a couple of pretty massive moves that were made by one organization in particular, the Cincinnati Bengals. Over the last couple of days, announced that they had, in fact, come to a agreement with their star wide receivers, both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Jamar Chase, now the highest non-paid quarterback in NFL history, as he agrees to a 4-year, $161 million deal, again making him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. Meanwhile, his running buddy, T. Higgins, who many assumed was going to be off to other pastures. I mean, you're not going to pay this much money for 2 wide receivers, right? Wrong. Cincinnati's like, no, yes, we will. So they, instead of, deciding to move on from him and move their money elsewhere, 4 years, $115 million for the former Clemson star. So the Chase news came out on Friday. He is going to be making $40+ million per year, which is just absolutely insane when you think about it that way, that's where we are. And I know there's been other deals, but like when I think of a wide receiver's making $40 million a year, that's just it's crazy. It's not bad or anything. It's just freaking crazy. So between Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, the Bengals are on average spending $125 million on just those 3 players every single season for the foreseeable future. They have now answered the questions about when are they going to ink Jamar Chase and what are they going to do with T. Higgins. Higgins gets the deal that's going to have him secure for the foreseeable future. So that was a long, winding road to finally get to this point, and there you go. The Bengals are going to have their quarterback and 2-star wide receivers. I don't know what else they're going to have or what else they can afford or how all that's going to look in the long run, but good for Jamar Chase and good for T. Higgins, and I guess good for the Bengals. Or how do you feel about that?
I mean, it'll be good for Joe Burrow, and that's good. I personally don't. I don't know if I would pay a second wide receiver that much when you have one of the best defensive ends in the league that also needs to get paid. And so if they wind up doing that, great. But then again, they're going to have to draft really well because they're all going to be tied up in 4 players. And they haven't done anything about the offensive line in Cincinnati, so they got to improve that. But if Joe Burrow's happy, then I guess everybody's happy.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I think he's got to be thrilled. I'm sure he's wanting some offensive linemen in the draft, and the draft's going to be really important for Cincinnati considering how much money they've got tied up in their star players. So they're going to have to be pretty good about who they get on the cheap for those first few years. And so there you go. Go ahead and buy your Jamar Chase Bengals jersey. Go ahead and buy your T. Higgins Bengals jersey, or don't worry about having to move away from it. Those guys are going to be in town for a while. And Garrett, I know that Cincinnati's got a probably special place in your heart because of the combination of the former LSU Tigers there. Where does Jamar Chase rank amongst your favorite LSU stars?
Man, I would put him probably in the top 5. I think I will take Justin Jefferson over him. I just kind of always lean more Justin Jefferson going back to their time at LSU. Both are really elite at what they do, obviously. But I think he would probably be in my top 5, but he's not going to crack the top 3.
Yeah, well, nice payday for those guys, huh?
Oh,
my
hell of
goodness.
A payday.
That LSU national championship team, those guys are right in the thick of their NFL careers, and you see them getting handsome paydays. So, yeah, Jamar Chase, highest paid non-NFL quarterback of all time. By the way, his 4-year, $161 million deal, $112 million guaranteed for Chase.
I don't know how you live on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Look, our deal is at least 150 guaranteed here.
Yeah, I mean, that's the starting point.
You can only
right?
have one jet.
I mean, you've got to make sacrifices here and there,
I guess
right?
So.
Higgins, meanwhile, his first couple of years are all that's guaranteed on his 4-year, $115 million deal. But, big-time money being thrown around there for wide receivers in Cincinnati. Meanwhile, some other NFL free agency news. The Houston Texans making some noise as they've locked down another former LSU star. It's actually a big week for LSU free agents as Derek Stingley Jr. reached a 3-year, $90 million extension with the Texans, highest paid cornerback NFL history. Of that $90 million, $89 million is guaranteed. So what happened to that $1 million? They're just like, nope, we refuse to give you that guaranteed money. But $89 of the $90 million is guaranteed. Average annual value surpasses previous record for corners, which was set just a week ago by J.C. Horn when he signed with the Carolina Panthers. Stingley was an All-Pro last year, had 5 interceptions, 18 pass breakups, second lowest completion percentage among cornerbacks with at least 200 coverage snaps, according to the ESPN write-up on this. Former number 3 pick in the 2022 draft, so on and so forth. Great player. And Nick Caserio locks down one of his stars. And Nico Collins, another Caserio draft pick that was mentioned in the article that I was reading that they signed, I guess that was last year. So now another guy of his that they're locking down for the long term. Locking down, no pun intended, but I guess pun intended in some ways.
Yeah, Derek Stingley is fantastic. And, I like everything the Texans are doing for the most part. I'm curious about how they're constructing their offensive line, but they're building the team the way that they want to do it, and trying to make sure that the defense is solid. They've got a quarterback that they think can be a true leader for years to come, even though last year was a little bit of a dip in that, but they had a ton of injuries and their offensive line took a huge step back. But I like everything they're doing right now.
So there's another big signing there from the past couple of days from NFL free agency. One more from the last 24 hours. You had Lane Johnson reworking his deal with the Philadelphia Eagles. So the big-time offensive tackle gets $8 million extra over the next couple of years, $30 million extra in guarantees, and adds another year at $25 million per that year to lock him down under contract with the Eagles through the 2027 season, so the next couple of years, in which he'll earn $48 million, possibly with $40 million of that guaranteed he will make over the next couple of seasons. So 6-time Pro Bowler, twice an All-Pro, 34 years old, and a guy who's been amongst the best at his position for a long time. So Philadelphia, at some point the money's going to have to be paid, but not right now. They just keep reworking or moving around or just doing whatever they got to do to keep this thing together, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. So you got Saquon locked down, and one of the main guys blocking for him wasn't going anywhere, but now has a rework deal. And what a career for a guy who was like a junior college quarterback and then a college tight end, and now he's been one of the best tackles in pro football.
Talk about a growth spurt.
Oh, yeah.
And look, the Eagles – they're doubling down on the now. And I think that's the biggest juxtaposition to them and the Cowboys, in that the Cowboys keep building for a future that just hasn't gotten here yet. And maybe one day we wake up and they were playing the long game. It all worked out. But the NFL is not a long game. It's not. It's you hit it now or you don't hit it and you start over. The Eagles are hitting it now. They're defending Super Bowl champs. And you know what? They know that there's going to be a day where Saquon's gone and A.J. Brown's gone and Jalen Hurts isn't what he was, and they got to rebuild. And the teams that know that and say, we're going to win now and then we'll, rebuild when we have to rebuild, are the ones that I have the most respect for, because you're doing it the way that you should be doing it. You're living in the reality, as opposed to, we don't want to give this guy – we don't want to rework this or get too aggressive or do these things because we want to make sure we have flexibility for the future. Well, how far in the future do you need that flexibility? 2, 3, 4 years, keep the flexibility. After that, Yeah, you're going to be in jail for a little bit, but you can get out. It's not impossible. Everybody's done it. Look, the Rams, I think, are back on the up after a couple years of it. I mean, just go and be aggressive. It pains me as a person who hates the Philadelphia Eagles and everything they stand for, but they're just damn good at what they do.
Yeah, I mean, proof's in the pudding with the couple Super Bowl titles here in the last few years, obviously the most recent one. And, yeah, they've made seemingly all the right moves and continue to just make moves. You wonder, how can they do that? And they are aggressive, like you said, and are just very prudent and very impressed with how they're being run these days, and obviously it shows in the results as well. So there have been some other signings here and there, just moves of sorts, but those are kind of the main ones, the main names from the last couple of days. So wanted to touch on those. I think, like one more is very brief, but just because he's a Texas guy, but Jeffrey Okudah did agree to a one-year deal with the Vikings. So there's moves like that are out there being made. But former Ohio State star from the state of Texas agreeing to a one-year deal with Minnesota. So there's just some of the rundown from recent NFL signings. All right, elsewhere to the NBA for a moment. Did you see what happened with Tracy Morgan?
I did, and
are you a big Tracy Morgan fan?
I love Tracy Morgan.
Well, Tracy Morgan.
Everyone should love Tracy Morgan.
Is a big New York Knicks fan. SNL former star, sitcom, 30 Rock.
30 Rock. Oh yeah.
It's been on all sorts of things over the years, but best known for SNL and 30 Rock. But Tracy Morgan, he's doing okay after a bit of a scare at the New York Knicks game last night. So he's no stranger to being at Madison Square Garden, a very proud Knicks fan. And he's a guy you'd see in probably the montages along with your Spike Lees and, just your typical usual suspects that you see at MSG. But he was sitting there courtside at the game last night as the Knicks took on the Miami Heat. And then in the third quarter, the game got paused out of nowhere, and it was paused for about 10 minutes, and the reason that it eventually came out as to why was because they couldn't play because somebody had thrown up all over part of the court, and it turns out that it was Tracy Morgan. He was sitting courtside, and there's actually footage, like somehow somebody in the stands was like on him at the exact right time, and he's just like projectile vomiting on the court. Mm-hmm. And then apparently his nose started bleeding. They had to run over and bring him a towel, and then eventually they had to take him off in a wheelchair as he was just, again, projectile vomiting, bleeding from the nose. So they had to stop the game. They eventually wheel him out. And so this had a lot of people concerned as to what was going on. He's had health problems as well in the past. Was it a really bad car wreck that he was involved in? Caused him a lot of issues. But he has come out today and said on social media that he was just dealing with food poisoning, that was the issue that had him in the headlines last night with his incident courtside. He said, "Thank you for all your concern. I'm doing okay now, and doctors say it was food poisoning. Appreciate my MSG family for taking such good care of me, and I need to shout out the crew that had to clean that up. Appreciate you. More importantly, the Knicks are now 1-0 when I throw up on the court, so maybe I'll have to break it out again in the playoffs." And he says this. Meanwhile, he's in a hospital bed. He's got the thumbs up, but he's in a hospital bed, and his shirt's off, and he's got all these, sensors attached to him. So pretty severe case of food poisoning and pretty scary situation, and hopefully that's all it is in the long run because he is a guy who's had to deal with health problems in the past. But a scary situation that for now and hopefully for the foreseeable future turns out to be nothing more than just a little bit of an issue with whatever he ate earlier in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. It made me think of Eddie Murphy did Tracy Morgan impression on the SNL 50 that was dead on. And he said, and I just thought of this, I had to look it up what he said. He was like, I need a lot of money. I eat 4 cheese lasagna. If there's 3 cheeses, I don't eat it. And Tracy just one of the funniest dudes ever. Everybody loves Tracy Morgan. Literally everybody in comedy loves Tracy Morgan. So super happy that it's just food poisoning.
Pretty severe case, though. My
Yeah,
gosh,
it
he's
is
all hooked
bad.
up in the hospital.
Yeah, exactly. And part of that's because he had a kidney transplant, and so
Yeah.
I'm sure they're thinking, oh, my gosh, is this an infection and all that? But just food poisoning, good. I feel bad for – I hope it wasn't the Knicks' food. Of course, that would be pretty fast. Usually food poisoning's like a day later.
Right.
You know what most of the time it is salad.
I know. Lettuce is pretty disgusting.
It's hard to, really you have to wash lettuce 30 times to get all the dirt out of it, or the nooks and crannies. So, but yeah, I'm happy that he's okay. He's got a new show coming out. Daniel Radcliffe's going to be in it with him, so I can't wait to watch that. So that was rough though. I saw the video on I just saw it last night on Twitter. I was just like, oh, the Knicks game. I was like, that's weird. Somebody threw up on the court, and then it occurred to me it's either a player or a rich person.
Yeah.
And then the person responded it was Tracy Morgan and saw the video. I was like, oh man, poor Tracy.
Yeah, it's scary because his nose was bleeding and he's throwing up everywhere. It's like, geez Louise. But he's okay apparently. So just throwing an update up there, and obviously he's a funny guy that we're fans of. So glad that it wasn't anything more serious to report. Meanwhile, another note or two. Happy opening day. It's officially opening day in baseball, but not officially opening day in baseball because it's just opening day for a couple of teams, the Dodgers and the Cubs. The first game of the year in the books as part of the Tokyo series. The game's being played out in Japan, and the Dodgers 4-1 winners over the Cubs in the first game of the Tokyo series. That does, in fact, open up the regular season, although we still got a week and change before everybody else actually gets underway. But the Dodgers do win 4-1 in front of a feisty crowd out there in Japan. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, obviously a part of the reason why they were selected was their immense star power with Ohtani and Yamamoto, among others. But Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the 26-year-old, goes 5 innings, gives up 3 hits, 1 earned run, had 4 Ks on the day as he picks up the win. And you had, a lot of flavor here just in terms of Japanese players on both rosters. You had Shota Imanaga on the other side of the mound for the Cubs. He goes 4 innings, 4 walks, 2 Ks, no earned runs.
No hits, though.
No hits. Yep, no hits
innings.
In his 4 innings of action. So he did his job, technically, but the rest of the pitching staff, in particular, Ben Brown, not able to hold off the Dodgers. So they do win 4-1, and this will continue. They got another game coming up tomorrow out in Tokyo. And as I mentioned, the rest of Major League Baseball will start to get underway in the coming days. But this is where they're getting started. They will play tomorrow, and then they'll have basically a week off until they actually open up again with the regular season back here in the States. But there you go. Major League Baseball is off and running, technically.
Yeah. Also, Seiya Suzuki for the Cubs is from Tokyo. And some guy named Ohtani was 2 for 5.
Yeah.
And I read he said he was nervous. They were all nervous playing in the Tokyo Dome.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal for them. That's a bucket list trip for me I would love to go and see the Dodgers and the Cubs, but I do think that was it the Yomiuri Giants that might have swept both teams? They played a split doubleheader against them and beat them both yesterday, which I thought was pretty cool. I've always wanted to go over and go to a baseball game in Japan. I think it would be super fun. But yeah, the Dodgers. You can't get to 162-0 without winning the first one, and I guess Roki Sasaki will start tomorrow, so that'll also be a big deal.
Yeah, you got Sasaki that we will see. You had Ohtani, obviously, in the lineup today. You had Yamamoto pitching. You had Suzuki there DHing for the Cubs, and then you also had, of course, Imanaga pitching as well. So, yeah, a lot of star power. You see why those were the 2 teams selected, all those big names from Japan. Able to add that much more oomph to what would already have been probably a pretty cool scene, but to have those guys involved in playing over in their home country. That's pretty awesome, and just smart of Major League Baseball to take advantage of that, as they will. So today, out there at the Tokyo Dome, Dodgers 4-1. They'll play again tomorrow, and then a few days later, we'll get the rest of MLB up and going as well. And I'll close out with one note. You pass this along. Joey Gallo, former Ranger, he is apparently making a move as he is going to try pitching in an effort to save his baseball career after going 2 for 20 in spring training Cactus League games with the White Sox. He struck out 11 times, and interesting enough, in spring training on a minor league contract at this point in his career, they announced Chicago that they were going to release him. And so he said on social media that he's done with the outfield and he's going to start pitching. He had expressed interest through his agent that if it didn't work out on ML team, he was going to explore that side of it. I know it's something he's been dabbling around with in between some of the reps here, but he asked for his release today, said Sox GM Josh Barfield, so we accommodated that. He's 31 years old. The White Sox seem A-okay moving on, especially because he wasn't a big investment, obviously, and Gallo's just trying to eke out what he can from what's remaining in his baseball career, so he's going to give pitching a try. What do you think about Joey Gallo trying to just keep this thing going, keep the train rolling?
Look, hey, if it works out and he can make it back to a major league roster as a pitcher, and then you can go throw him in the lineup and get a couple of homers out of him as well, that'd be fine. Good luck to him. His average just keeps plummeting. I mean, he's got.
It's crazy.
He has two modes. It leaves or he's 2 feet away from it. It's such a wild thing. Like, he is, again, like, it's 450 feet going out at 140 miles an hour, or he didn't see the pitch and just whiffs. I know that there's been a lot of guys that are in that vein. I've never seen someone with the extremes of Joey Gallo.
No, it's freaking ridiculous, and I'll be glad to say that I was way wrong on, at least early on when he was hyped up, you always liked your prospects and everything. But pretty quickly I was like, yeah, he's not going to be the savior of the franchise. We can move on from him. Another guy, you can throw him on a stack of names that Alfonso Soriano or other guys I've been excited about that I probably was overly excited about, and Joey Gallo was one of those guys for a little bit, but did not blink twice when Texas moved on, and not surprised at all. I mean, like you said, the extremes, just the number of strikeouts is insane, man. Like, it's so crazy how much he strikes out. So good luck to him. Don't know how realistic his odds are, but I understand trying to do what you can to keep your career going. So Joey Gallo now trying to be a pitcher and is officially done playing position ball. There you go. So there's a few things off the radar.
Yeah, when they were first in the old ballpark with Joey Gallo, there used to be a sign on top of the roof in right field that said "Hit it here and win a free suit." And the only person I thought could have ever done it would have been Ken Griffey Jr. And then when I first saw Gallo, I was like, well, he might win that suit. Like, if somebody's going to win that suit, he might win that suit. So let's see what happens. Nobody ever won the suit, No, nobody ever.
Way out there.
Yeah, it was way out there. But I thought, like, hey, he hits the ball so hard that maybe he would. But yeah, that's well, good luck to him. Baseball is a tough game, man. It giveth and it taketh away.
It definitely has humbled him, I think, for a guy who's got a lot of power. He has been humbled by the strikeouts. I mean, that's for sure. Has been with multiple teams. So, he was hanging on by a thread. 4 teams in the last 4 years. Was on a 5th now, trying to make a team. So, there you go. And like I said, there's a few things off the radar. So we'll see what's in store here in a couple days. Get back to this segment.
Absolutely. When we come back, Tim Brando, Fox Sports. He'll talk basketball. We'll also talk football with him, as we always do. Our buddy Brando. Next up, this is 365 Sports.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected. Get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Welcome back. Hall of Fame columnist John McClain, and hopefully soon to be Hall of Fame documentary filmmaker John McClain with us here on 365 Sports. And John, lots to talk about in the NFL world, but the Texans, $90 million, 89 of it guaranteed to Derek Stingley. Why not the full amount?
Well, I have no clue. It's weird. Some of these numbers, like, I can't remember what it was. Myles Garrett got guaranteed like 153. What would he have said no if it was 150? Derek Stingley Jr. was as good as any cornerback in the league last year. His third year, he was eligible for an extension, and he's averaging $30 million a year, which makes him the highest defensive player in history. And it's only a 3-year extension, Paul. He's 23 now. So if he were to play out his contract, which he won't because they always sign to extensions, he would be an unrestricted free agent at 28, still just in the prime of his career. Every week, Paul, we see this guy's the highest paid non-quarterback in history. The next week, that guy is the highest paid non-quarterback in history. It changes by the week. The owners have so much money. And I tell you the one that's screwing up, and I know you'll be shocked. If the Cowboys had signed Micah Parsons last year, what could they have gotten him for? $30 million a year before
probably.
Last season?
Yeah.
Now they're going to have to pay more than Myles Garrett. I have never seen a team continually screw up contract negotiations like the Cowboys do. And the players almost always get their money, the stars. But if you sign them earlier, it's cheaper. And so it just makes no sense to me. And I know all Cowboy fans feel the same way I do. They know the Jones family is screwing it up.
Hey, well, then you don't get the rush of the deal, John. The deadline makes deals. It's the rush. It's the adrenaline. That's what's important, not the finances of it.
Well, that's the only way that you could make sense of why they do it. They want their guy to be the only one signing, and they're going to get maximum attention out of it. But I don't know if it's Stephen Jones, Jerry Jones, or Joe Dokes, but they have got to change their philosophy or they're doomed to continue to not get back to a Super Bowl.
John, I know that it just goes, with the times and things like that. We've seen massive per-year deals in the NBA, but still, is it just kind of shocking to see a cornerback making $30 million per year, wide receiver making $40 million per year? It's crazy to me, even though I know the money's been huge for a long time.
Craig, I'm kind of numb to it. I'm wondering who's the next one's going to be the highest paid non-quarterback. Do you think it would be Micah Parsons? And that just seems like such a natural thing, and it's going to keep going up. Salary cap keeps going up. If the owners weren't rolling in dough, they wouldn't be spending it. They are so flush with cash. The notoriously cheapest team in football, decade in and decade out, the Cincinnati Bengals, just spent a fortune to re-sign both of their wideouts, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, to multi-year contracts. Now they've got to do it for their defensive end, Trey Hendrickson. And based on what they've done, there's no doubt to me they'll get it done. They have changed their entire philosophy.
John, if you were the Steelers, Giants, or Vikings, would you be wasting your time waiting on Aaron Rodgers? And I guess by the phrasing of that question, you can tell how I feel about that.
Well, I think everybody feels that way. Why he wouldn't go to Pittsburgh is beyond me, because Steelers have an opening. They don't want to have fall back on Russell Wilson. You know they're going to have a winning record under Mike Tomlin, which means they're going to be a playoff contender, where I don't know what the plan would be in Minnesota. Supposedly he wants to go to the Vikings, and they're trying to decide, well, what takes so long? Why is he letting money be an issue? He's made over $300 million. He's not married. He should go where the best opportunity is, and that's Pittsburgh. Because when he goes to Minnesota, is he going to start over J.J. McCarthy? If that's the plan, they should have kept Sam Darnold.
John, going back to the Bengals, was that just crazy to see? I mean, were you surprised they inked both of those receivers? I guess with the thought kind of being that Higgins might be on his way out.
I thought they might keep Higgins one more year on the franchise tag, then he would be gone. Their fans are so fired up there. Remember, I think they ended the season with a 5-game winning streak, but they are notorious slow starters, including Joe Burrow. So whatever has plagued them in these recent years, they got to do something about it. Because if they were to, they're not going to let Trey Hendrickson get away because he's under contract. But they've got to work on their defense now. They need a better offensive line. They need a better running game. They made a big mistake trading Joe Mixon for a 7th-round pick because their running game was worse. But right now they will be the funnest team to watch because they're going to throw it all over the place.
John, do you think they will get a deal done with Trey Hendrickson?
I got to believe it, Paul. We've just seen what they've done with the receivers. Why not with Hendrickson? He is to the defense what they are to the offense. And I guess if Joe Burrow tells them to get it done, they'll get it done.
Do you envision any bigger names moving post-draft or during the draft based on how things fall?
If a big name moved, it's because he's hurt, coming off an injury, or he wants too much money. So, no, I don't think at this point. The main big wave's over in free agency. Next one will be after the draft. The one after that will be right when training camp is starting and all these people thought they were going to get more money, will say, okay, we'll give you $1 million for 1 year with some incentives. In reality, has to come into it. Only way you'd see a big name is if, say, a team got a draft pick that they really liked at a position, which could make a guy making a lot of money expendable.
I read Mel Kiper's mock draft this morning. He had Jackson Dart going to the Saints, and I think that's the 9th pick. John, do you see 3 quarterbacks sneaking into this? I mean, 1 other quarterback sneaking into the first round?
Last year, I think every mock draft I saw, not one had Bo Nix going in the first round, second round at most. And then Sean Payton took him, and he turned out to be a great pick. Isn't it amazing? Since the season ended, Jackson Dart's last 2 games were terrible. What has he done? He was at the Senior Bowl workouts, and all of a sudden, he's catapulted into the first round. Why is it? What has he done to get people to think that kind of improvement? But there's so many desperate teams out there. Why not Jackson Dart?
Yeah, John, that's true. Before we let you go, the Astros are, it's almost the end of spring training. We had the first game today in Tokyo. How are you feeling about the Astros as they stand right now? Altuve playing in left field and all those things.
I like the fact that everybody's picking the Rangers or the Mariners. The Astros have not been in the underdog role for a while. Their starting pitching is good, 6 deep. They've got questions in the bullpen other than Brian Abreu and Josh Hader. Christian Walker at first, Isaac Paredes at third. The key is right field. They're a great young player. Cam Smith had 2 more hits and a homer yesterday, but he's destined to go back to AA or AAA where he can play every day in right field. For whatever reason, people thought he'd be a right fielder. The Astros waited till last week to make that decision, which was stupid. There's no way they're going to go into the season without Altuve in left and Smith in right when neither has played the position.
Well, you know where Cam Smith is from, don't you, John?
Florida State.
That's right.
14th overall pick.
That's right.
Right now, he's the best player in their minor league system, and it'll be shocking if he's not with the big boys this season.
Oh yeah, I'm excited for it as a fellow alum. John, I tried very hard in my fantasy baseball draft to get Yordan Alvarez because I love him. He's just my most favorite hitter in the league a lot of the time because he just gets locked in. But yeah, I think it's interesting them playing in the underdog role. Craig?
Yeah, I almost forgot to ask this, John. John Weeks, the end of an era there in Houston, John. I'm glad I remember to ask you about this.
John Weeks is, to me, as good as any snapper in the history of the NFL. John should be in the Baylor Athletic Hall of Fame. I think there's only one player who played longer. That was kicker Matt Bryant. Never had one bad snap in 15 years. And he told me 2 years ago, I make the minimum every year. And if I keep playing, the minimum is going to cost me my job. So he went to the 49ers for $1.4 million. And he's going to be missed here by so many. One of the all-time class guys. And he's from Baylor. And by the way, guys, when it comes to the men and the women, second Bears.
John McClain with us here on 365 Sports. John, we'll talk to you next week. Oh, okay, there we go. All right, and let's go to our good friend Tim Brando. Tim, sorry about the wait there on McClain, but I figured you'd enjoy it. I know that you.
Oh, I love John. I love him. He's great.
That
was a bonus.
So Tim, we are to March Madness now. I'm curious your thoughts on. There's all this talk about expansion. I told Brett Yormark last year, just a year ago, we had him on the show because we were at Big 12 Pro Days, where we'll be tomorrow, that if he went to the games that he was going to tonight, walked seat for seat to every person and say, should we expand this? only maybe one of them would have been like, sure, do whatever you want. All the rest of the people in the stadium would be like, no, this is perfect. Did the way that we've had this debate over the committee in North Carolina, Texas, Xavier, and of course West Virginia, you got snubbed. Does that maybe point out that we have enough teams in this thing right now?
Well, it might be designed for that, fellas. I mean, it might, but we don't need more teams. I disagree with Brett on that. I know a lot of the commissioners, and certainly they're listening to their coaches. Coaches' jobs rely on whether they make it or don't make it, into the tournament in a lot of cases. If a coach goes, I mean, we just saw it at Iowa. Fran McCaffrey, a very accomplished coach, most successful, winningest coach in school history, misses two. Okay, he was there for 17 years, and he brought them the level of talent that they had never before seen. Not even under Dr. Tom Davis did they have that kind of talent. They won a Big Ten tournament title just a handful of years ago, and now he's done. And I don't know who Iowa's going to get. If they capture lightning in a bottle, fine. But the reality is that's what's at work here. The coaches' jobs are on the line. The ADs feel that because if they make a poor choice, then they get heat. And then the commissioners hear about it. But at some point, we got to be thinking about the fans and the viewers. And, college basketball's regular season is what needs to be fixed, not the postseason. Postseason's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more, Tim. This is a year for the one seeds that looks like it could go very, very well for them. They're all kind of set up well. Some years we have that, San Diego State and FAU vibe. I'm not getting that from this year just yet.
No, excuse me. I'm fighting some allergies having played some golf yesterday. So if I sneeze on you, I don't have a cough button or a sneeze button in front of me here.
We'll edit it out.
The reality is, you're right. This is a season where we see tremendous balance. I do think we're going to have a lot of upsets. I've got a lot of upsets in my bracket. I mean, a lot. But I do think whenever you have that happen, it opens the door for easier roads for those number ones. And I've got Auburn's going in. I got St. John's at 2. I got Duke and Houston. So I've got 3 of 4 1s and 1-2 as my final 4. Now, there's a chance that the SEC could get 3 in. I mean, they're that good. But I just don't think, from a matchup standpoint, all of them have as easy a road as a lot of people might think. Florida having to deal with St. John's, I think, is problematic. But again, we could have upsets early that impact that. I think those 8-9 games are going to take something out of teams. Florida, for instance, I think will play UConn. That's going to be a hard out. That's not going to be an easy one for them. You're playing a 2-time defending champion. Oops. Maybe you'll have to edit that out. Sorry. Excuse me. You're playing a 2-time defending champion that has a hell of a coach that knows how to win in tournament play. I mean, it's been, over 2 years since they lost a tournament game, an NCAA tournament game. So, I think that when you get to that road and you get to this part of the season, those that have traveled that journey, those that have been on this journey, have a distinct advantage. And even though I've got them getting through that game, I think it'll take a lot out of them. I just believe that St. John's will be the beneficiary of what UConn can do to give them a blueprint. St. John's is a far more complete team than UConn, but UConn is certainly good enough to scare Florida. And Florida looked unbeatable, really, the last month of the season. And I think a lot of times when teams peak at the end of the regular season and in their conference tournament, as Florida did, that can be problematic when you get to this tournament. I mean, it's just hard to keep that momentum going when you get into the NCAAs. I've seen it happen too often.
Yeah. You mentioned St. John's. Rick Pitino, he wins everywhere he goes.
Yep.
And St. John's in this era now of where they've pulled out all the stops that would stop them from competing with the big boys anymore when you've got NIL and the transfer portal. Now, he didn't really dive into it as much as maybe you would think. He enhanced the roster, but for him being there and bringing that program back, Tim, I'm sure you did some St. John's games back in the day when they were very relevant and they were a player. What does it mean to that city and that team to be back where their alums feel that they should be?
You know, I missed the tournament this year, which sort of sucked. Hopefully we can remedy that. Fox sold off the first 5 games to Peacock, and I didn't get to work my usual games there. I really wanted to be there because I knew St. John's and that city was ready to go nuts with them as a top seed. And I really did feel that they would win it because they're so complete. I mean, they've got players, believe it or not, that a lot of people don't know that much about. Usually when St. John's is this good, everybody knows about their players. But I don't know outside the Big East who knows that much about Zuby Ejiofor, other than fans in the Big 12 that saw him ride the bench at Kansas, not get off the pine. I mean, that kid is big enough, strong enough to play with Florida's bigs. That's one of the reasons why I think they can get through it. I think the strength of St. John's is middle game, front court game, guys that can match Florida's depth in their front court to go along with a level of moxie and leadership. Kadari Richmond is a matchup nightmare. He's an NBA guard. I mean, he's every bit of 6'7", and he brings it up he gets downhill and really forces defenses to collapse, and that just releases guys for open shots. They don't win because of the three. It's maybe Rick's worst three-point shooting team to ever win a title. So many of those teams, the Kentucky teams, the Providence team in '87 that I saw a lot of, those were three-point shooting teams. This one isn't. But yeah, I mean, the days of Louis Carnesecca all the way through really until he retired with guys like Boo Harvey and Jason Williams and so many other really great players, they were relevant even though they didn't make another Final Four. They got to an Elite Eight again under Louis after they went to the Final Four in '85. But I think that more people knew about the Johnnies personnel-wise around the country than do this year. At the beginning of the season, people were just wondering if they'd get into the tournament. And I remember doing a game in December when Ejiofor had his first of 2 buzzer beaters to win a game from the same spot on the floor. If you saw the buzzer beater he had on the road at Marquette to beat them on their senior day, the same kind of shot that he got off an offensive rebound back in December. I think it was December the 20th in Providence, which was a crushing loss. I don't think Providence ever really recovered from. But Zuby became, I think, one of the strong leaders of the team. They got 3 guys, R.J. Lewis, Zuby Ejiofor, and without the doubt, Kadari Richmond, that are matchup nightmares. When you've got 3 strong options like the Johnnies do, that can really serve you well. And they're all capable of beating you at the end, making plays themselves at the end. Ejiofor can now even put it on the deck a little bit. And he is a big-time force, back to the basket player, primarily in what they do offensively. So that's why I've got them going, and I think that ultimate, maybe the best regional final we could possibly see is Florida and St. John's, because Florida may be the most complete team that we've seen play in the last month and a half. I just think St. John's is a team that matches up really, really well with them. It's interesting because Florida is the 4th number 1 seed. You can make a case that they deserve to be where Auburn is from a bracketing standpoint, the overall number 1, particularly the way they played late. But for whatever reason, it's funny, the committee keeps talking about their metrics, and they never take into account how teams are playing late. And it used to be the last 10 games mattered a lot to the committee. They've changed all that now, and it doesn't seem, unless it's an either-or team that could get in or not get in based on bid stealing, very rarely do the conference tournament championships mean a damn thing to the committee when it comes to seeding.
Yeah, well, I mean, just ask Oklahoma. They did not have a very fun second part of the season, and they're in the tournament now. They're rewarded with an angry UConn team. So.
Yeah, that is a bad draw for Oklahoma.
Yeah.
That is a really bad draw. Now, it's great that the SEC got all those teams in. I'm sure they're stoked about it. You certainly can make a case, and we're hearing it around the country, that 6 and 12 or 8 and massive. 4 teams ended 8 and 10 in that league, but the committee has always said this isn't about the conferences at all when you're selecting these teams. It's about the teams, what they have accomplished, And the strength of schedule definitely plays a role. And, some of these teams played outstanding non-conference schedules, and that helped them. I mean, that's the excuse they're giving with North Carolina. Okay. That is the excuse they're giving with North Carolina. It doesn't work with me, but that's the excuse that they're giving.
My favorite 12-5 matchup is Will Wade at McNeese State going up against his alma mater in Clemson, which could be his last ride at McNeese. I mean, NC State seems to really, at least the fans really want him. I think a lot of schools would really love to have Will Wade there. I mean, LSU's not been anything since he left, and he didn't move far away.
And by the way, what's wrong now with a strong-ass offer?
No, nothing.
Not a damn thing wrong with a strong-ass offer now. So, I mean, hell yeah, I want that guy. If he's going to make a strong-ass offer, I want on my staff.
Yeah.
I've got them to the Sweet 16. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to win that game, and I think that's one of the places in my bracket where I've got a couple of upsets, and I think that that's going to be one of them. Brad Brownell's a great coach. His team made a run to the Elite Eight last year. I thought they got hosed at the end of the Louisville game, but in the tournament. But honestly, I do think it's a tough matchup for them because McNeese just there are two teams that relentlessly attack offensively and just make it a miserable matchup, no matter how much better you think your team is. Grand Canyon is one, and under Bryce Drew, and McNeese is another. I don't think Bryce got a good draw this year, so I've got them getting knocked out early this time around. That's another guy, by the way, that I think may be leaving for brighter pastures. He's done a hell of a job to get that team to 3 consecutive NCAAs out of that conference.
Yeah, and from one of the great basketball families, as we know here.
Absolutely. Yep.
Tim, last thing I'll ask you, Kelvin Sampson and the Houston Cougars are right there every year. They're just right there. I think because of the way that Florida and Duke and they'd have to play Duke in the Final Four more than likely and all that. But this feels like a team that if they stay healthy, because they play 3 kinds of games: good, really good, and great. They don't play bad ones.
No, they don't. And their defense always has their back. If it hadn't been for Shed getting hurt, I think we all know they would have made it last year. And I think they do make it this year. I like their draw. I do think they'll have a tough game with Tennessee in the regional finals. I think Tennessee is in a good position. And I think that half of the bracket's going to open up a little bit with maybe some upsets. Do you want to hear my 4, or do you want to hear my?
Yeah, I do. I'm curious.
My 4 are Auburn's. Well, I mentioned it earlier. I think Auburn, St. John's, Duke, and Houston are my 4 teams. Here are the major upsets that I have early. Okay, on my sheet, I've got UC San Diego beating the Big Ten tournament champions. I've got Yale taking out A&M. I think that this is the same kind of Yale team that beat Auburn. And this this A&M team is one that's new to the tournament. Buzz has got a tough matchup here, and I think Yale's going to be a problem for them. So I've got UC San Diego and Yale coming in the second round in that particular region. I think Iowa State's going to be pushed, but I think they'll get through to play Ole Miss. I think Michigan State will be in the Elite Eight with Auburn, but I think Auburn's got just too much. They're too long. They're too good. And Michigan State wins with defense, but Auburn does too. So that's a bad matchup for Izzo to get to the Final Four this year, particularly. The other upsets that I see that are important that maybe are worth pointing out: High Point to beat Purdue and McNeese to beat Clemson. I think back-to-back upsets in that region, and McNeese to beat High Point before they play Houston in the Sweet 16. Xavier is a team that's got to play in the first 4 against North Carolina. Sean Miller's team is playing really, really well. If they don't turn it over, they beat people. They shoot a really quality percentage. Zach Fremantle is one of the best bigs in the country, and he's going to be a pro. And the biggest problem for them is at times they get sloppy with the ball. I think North Carolina's issues will be more on the defensive side too. So in that's a compelling first 4 game. As much as we are bitching and moaning and whining about Carolina getting in, look, they're there for a reason, and a lot of people are going to tune into that game. Is that one tonight or tomorrow? I think it may be tonight. But
North Carolina's tonight, right? Yeah, North Carolina's tonight. Yeah,
that's got a lot of viewers for that game,
Mm-hmm.
and I think Xavier will win it. And then I think Xavier will beat Kentucky in the next round, move on before they play Tennessee. I think the Xavier Tennessee game in the Sweet 16 will be a fun one to watch. So there's always an 11 seed. There's always somebody that comes out of the first four that makes at least a run to the second round and maybe even to the Sweet 16. This year, I think Xavier is going to be that team. So I see upsets, yes, no question about it. But I do think it'll be chalk in terms of getting to the Final Four. And San Antonio will be excited to have four teams like Auburn, St. John's, Duke, and Houston. I've got Houston beating Duke, and I've got Auburn winning it all because I just think they've got too much size, strength, and length for Houston. But it'll be a defensive-minded game. First one to 60 probably wins because it's going to be a rock fight probably in the national title game.
Tim Brando, usually we're talking football. Today we're talking basketball. Tim, love you. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.
You bet. Can't wait to do it. All the best and enjoy the madness. I know I will.
Yeah. Tim Brando, Fox Sports with us here on 365 Sports. Baylor head coach Scott Drew is next.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Attention Central Texas. The Jeep Celebration event is happening now at Allen Samuels in Waco. Drive home a legendary 2024 Jeep Wrangler, Sahara, Rubicon, or Grand Cherokee, saving 20% off MSRP. Or save a whopping $13,000 on a 2024 Jeep Grand Wagoneer. Prefer low financing? Get 3.9% for 72 months. But hurry, these deals won't last long. Hurry to Allen Samuels in Waco, where we always say,
come by, let's be friends.
All Texans.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Baylor head head basketball coach Scott Drew with us here on 365 Sports. Coach, you're heading off to play Mississippi State here soon. This is a really intriguing first-round matchup. Before we talk about some other things, what have you seen from this team that the SEC had this really great, deep league this year, and all but two teams made it, and Mississippi State was one of the better ones?
Yeah, Mississippi State has been ranked most of the year, and Coach Jan's done a great job, gotten them the tournament 3 straight years now. And this is whenever you see an 8-9 game, normally that's a really balanced and tough game. With that, I think Mississippi State with Coach Jans has a great reputation of playing really hard. And really competing on the glass defensively. This team can really score for them. They've averaged 77 for the season, and you look at their last couple games, 92 points, 82 points, 81 points. So they're used to scoring a lot of points.
This season for you guys, because of the health of the roster, has been it's been different than the last few years, obviously. What does that challenge you as a coach to have to come up with new things all the time? You know, we've talked about, you probably haven't had but 3 practices all year that are the same like group of players all there at practice. That's just practice. We're not talking about games. So that's been tough.
Well, I think most people would agree that practice makes perfect. And if you don't practice, it's hard to be perfect in a game. And with us, credit the guys that have been able to play when they've been able to play. They've done a great job. Not everybody gets to the NCAA tournament. It's not a given. There's 363 or 364 teams. And at the end of the day, a lot of people wish they had an opportunity to be in it. We're blessed to be in it. And for the most part, besides Langston in the last couple weeks, we've been for the last 3 weeks now, we've been pretty healthy. So at least we're getting some rhythm and some chemistry there. And hopefully we've been playing good basketball. Hopefully we can keep progressing. And you want to play your best at the end of the year. And now's when it matters most. And this is probably the healthiest we've been. So hopefully that carries us through.
You have a player at North Chatham-Mere who averages a double-double every night. And I'm not sure if basketball fans, even some of the most intense ones, understand how difficult that is to do.
Yeah, I just saw he passed Tim Duncan on the double-double list. I think Tim had 87 and he's at 88 or 89. So when you're breaking Tim Duncan's records, you know you're doing something well.
Yeah, and it's been fun. It's been fun to watch him. Your 2 super freshmen in VJ and Rob Wright have really helped you out a lot at times. Is there a time, I like to ask coaches this, is there a time where you look at them and even though like it still says F by their name, freshman, do you think like this is not a freshman anymore? I'm sure both of them it probably was 2 months, 3 months ago.
Well, I think 2 things with that. One, when you usually get to conference play, after 4, 5, 6 games of conference play, they've gotten their feet wet. They know what it is. They played enough non-conference games. They're not freshmen anymore. At the same time, normally freshmen hit a wall at some point. And we've been blessed because we've had a lot of good freshmen. And there's always going to be highs and lows, but we really haven't hit a wall where they haven't bounced back in the past. So both of them are playing well, and hopefully in the NCAA tournament they continue to do what they've been doing, and that is a lot of exciting plays, a lot of winning plays, and at the end of the day, things should be easier for them now than they were at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, as they've adjusted.
What is it like looking into your team's eyes when they hear the announcement, especially the guys who have not been there before? That moment that you know, when you're in the gym alone and you're in the driveway shooting hoops alone, that you pretend that is they're actually going to run out on the court with the NCAA tournament, stamped on the ground.
Yeah, it means a lot to all of them. Some of them freshmen, some of them like Jalen that haven't been in the NCAA tournament. So you've been in college for 4 years and you haven't gone to the tournament, and you get an opportunity, you're really excited because you know how hard it is to get there, and you've always wanted to be a part of it. And people come to Baylor and they expect to be in the NCAA tournament. And at the end of the day, once you get to that a final selection Sunday, they realize, man, this is a lot harder than I thought to get here because no matter who you are, you face a lot of adversity throughout a season, and starts in the summertime when you're getting your team prepared and ready. So they put in a lot of work. Now the reward of the best month of college basketball.
Because of what you just said and the nature of this tournament, is that what makes it to where everything that's happened until you tip the ball off against Mississippi State on Thursday or Friday is done? Like it doesn't matter. Like you are here now. You're the 9 seed playing the 8 seed. You've got Mississippi State, and nothing that happened in the tournament, anything before, matters one lick.
Well, I think you can learn from all your experiences, positive and negative, which hopefully help you be successful in that game. But at the same time, that's why it's March Madness. That's why the last couple of years, nobody has a perfect bracket after the first weekend. I mean, if you have 1 million, 2 million people filling out a bracket, no one can get it right. It just tells you that it's called March Madness for a reason. And in a 40-minute game, anything can happen. So whatever you've done up to this point, matters what you do for the next 40 minutes.
You, because your coaching staffs have been so successful, you've had, guys going on and getting head coaching jobs. So for you, the last couple of years, you've had to adjust to new staffs more than you had in the previous 15 years of your career. How has that been, rebuilding that? I know that there's sadness and you see your guys go and proud that there are, but then there's challenges, but you're a builder. You like that, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I think it is what it is. If we're doing our job, people have a chance to move on and have other opportunities that God gives them and wants them to take in life. And our guys that have left have been prayerful and felt that God opened those doors for them. So we're excited for their opportunities. At the same time, it's just like in any business, any profession, whatever you do, normally your first day on the job is not as good as your next year on the job. And your next year on the job is not as good as the following year on the job. So, I mean, with the new staff, you can have a great staff, but that chemistry improves over time. So normally you're better the longer you're together, especially in the first couple of years. So love our staff, but again, when you're working with new guys, you're never as good year one as you are hopefully year 2, year 3, year 4.
How valuable is someone like Jeremy Roach or Norchad? They've both been on deep runs in the tournament right now for the young guys or the guys who haven't been there, just as how to approach this from mentally and all that.
And that's huge from the standpoint that players spend more time with players than they do coaches. They listen to each other, and the peer pressure is a lot greater. So if you have good leaders in the locker room, we all know a player-led team is better than a coach-led team. And that's a big reason why we wanted those two guys here, is because they've had success and helped get a team to a Final Four. So their wisdom, their knowledge is important, and hopefully pays dividends.
Every year I know people ask you about playing your brother and scheduling your brother and all that, and your answer is always the same. The only time it'll happen is if it's in the NCAA tournament. Well, they've set up the bracket to where it's about as hard as it could be for it to happen because you guys are completely on opposite sides. But I got to tell you, if you did, that would be one heck of a thing, because the only way it could happen would be in the championship game.
Well, that would be really good, and both of us would take that right now.
Yeah, I'm sure you would.
Yeah.
You don't get to be brothers for like 3 hours.
3 hours.
Right?
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Well, Scott, good luck in the tournament. You guys have a really interesting draw. I know that you take it one game at a time, but to have Duke in there, and I know that those things are daunting, but do you view these all as opportunities? Like, you have an opportunity to beat a really good SEC team. You have an opportunity to beat, one of the best teams in the country. So it doesn't overwhelm you.
You sound like a coach. I love it. I love it. And you know what? That's exactly what they are.
Yeah. Well, Scott, good luck. Enjoy it. I know that you always do, and you're you guys have a blast every time you go and you enjoy the moment. Always great to talk to you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. And for all those that are making the trip, safe travels. We'll see you there. Thank you.
All right. Absolutely. Go. It's so much fun to go to the NCAA tournament. If you've never been, you absolutely have to go. That is Baylor head coach Scott Drew. The top 5 is coming up next.
You spent hours selecting your patio sofa. Choosing that grill would have taken weeks. Probably your car needed way more time. For sure, you would have spent months mulling over that pool of yours. Protecting your prized possessions needs no time, though. Just visit coversandall.com, create a custom size per your requirements, pick a fabric, and personalize your cover. And leave the rest to us. Premium protection for all that you love.
You might ask yourself what functional mushrooms are good for. Whether it's lion's mane, cordyceps, turkey tail, shiitake, reishi, they all serve a purpose.
You have ones for neurological health, ones for sleeping and gut health and all these different areas. They pack a powerful punch.
Functional mushrooms are, of the millions of mushrooms and fungi out there, the ones that we can actually ingest and benefit from as humans.
Like all adaptogens, they kind of adapt to what you need at the time that you need them.
We don't even really know that we're suffering. We just don't quite feel right. That's where these adaptogens come in and really start to close the gap and really start getting us closer to how we want to feel.
Functional mushrooms have definitely re-energized me and helped me face each day with a new vigor for life.
Learn ways that functional mushrooms can help you. Go to getumble.com.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 brought to you by Ticket Club. Forget the fees, just big savings. Click the link in the description to find out more.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5 brought to you by Ticket Club. Today, sleepers in the NCAA tournament. Number 5, the Drake Bulldogs. By the way, this is an aside. Before I get into Ben McCollum and his team that's excellent defensively and very efficient in their scoring and all those things, when you try to find a gif of Drake basketball, Drake Bulldogs, you don't really get this. You get, I'm going to call him former rapper Drake because I think after what's happened with Kendrick Lamar, can we call him that now? Celebrity Drake, either shooting a basketball, sitting at side of a basketball. Drake holding a bulldog. Not this, which is what I want. And I kind of suspected that would be the case, but it was annoying because I wanted a nice motion graphic for you today. But because of Drake, so Kendrick, feel free to put this in your next track. Because of Drake, there are no good Drake basketball gifts. So, I don't know if that's up there with Serena or A minor or any of the other things, but I think it should be because it was really annoying because it was like 300 graphics I looked through and nothing. And there's probably fans that have made some. Just, you can't find them because of that guy. So anyway, let's talk about Ben McCollum and his team. Now look, he's only been at Drake a year. He and Darren DeVries are two of the top candidates for the Indiana job, according to Jeff Goodman of the Field of 68. Now, will either of them get it? We still don't know. But the reason he is up for this, he's won 4 national titles at the Division II level, and this team is really, really, really good. They play great defense. They are very efficient scoring. Mizzou, who they have to play, also very good, but certainly on upset alert because of Ben McCollum and Drake, who might be Ben McCollum and the Hoosiers in a few short days. Or maybe Ben McCollum and Drake again for another year. We'll see. Moving on. Number 4, McNeese. Will Wade, who was run out of LSU because they were forced to fire him. Believe me, they didn't want to. And believe me, they knew what he was doing during all that time, and they were fine with it, which is one of the reasons now why so many schools have embraced the new NIL culture, because they were doing it anyway, and now they don't have to pretend like this is what happened. But Will Wade, look, he sounded like a real jackass on those phone calls. We know that. And we know that everything he did at LSU has now led him to here at McNeese. He will be playing against his alma mater, the Clemson Tigers, in the first round of the NCAA tournament as a 12 and a 5 seed. As good as Clemson is, I think Will Wade gets them. I think they're in the Sweet 16. This team is super fun to watch, and he might be on his way back to the ACC because the NC State Wolfpack, at least their fans, we haven't heard, obviously, from their athletic director yet on this, but the fans have a first choice for their job, and it is WW Will Wade right here. Big upset alert for Clemson in the first round, going against one of their own in Will Wade. Number 3, Georgia. Mike White has one of the most bizarre coaching swaps in the history of the world. He was the coach at Florida. They were meh. They were fine. And it didn't look like he was going anywhere. He then jumps to Georgia, which is obviously one of Florida's biggest rivals. And that's worked out. This is a really good team look, they've got to play Gonzaga. That's one of the tougher 8-9 matchups that you're going to see. But if Georgia gets going, they've shown this year they can get hot and they can beat just about anybody in the SEC on the right day. So you don't want to mess with the Georgia Bulldogs this year and Mike White, although Gonzaga, as Evan Miyakawa told us on today's show, a statistical darling. Not their typical, 1 or 2 seed Gonzaga, but still coached by Mark Few, one of the best in the game. But still, the Georgia Bulldogs, watch out. They might get you. Grand Canyon, Bryce Drew, 3 years in a row getting Grand Canyon into the NCAA tournament. Really an amazing job there, and he may not be long for that job either because people are going to come after him for some of those big-time open jobs. So This is a team really dangerous. Look, they've got a tough draw with Maryland, who's very good as their 13-4 matchup, and then likely a matchup with Memphis in the second round. And Penny Hardaway's done a great job there this year, especially if they get Tyrese Hunter going for the Tigers. But Grand Canyon, a very dangerous team and very dangerous for the Maryland Terrapins. Do not sleep on Bryce Drew and Grand Canyon. And number 1, Yale. Oh, but a decade ago, I was in Providence, Rhode Island, and a very large man with a white beard and a red sweater who looked like Captain Freaking Kangaroo asked Torian Prince, how does Yale out-rebound Baylor? And it ended in Torian Prince's very sarcastic and lovely response to this jackass who told him what a rebound was. But Yale's been here before. They've upset people. They've upset Baylor. They beat Auburn in the first round last year, this year's number 1 overall seed. And who do they have this year? The constantly unlucky in every single sport, Texas A&M Aggies. No matter how good it gets, there's always somebody out there to pull the football away from them, like Lucy and Charlie Brown. Well, could it be Yale? A lot of people seem to think so. In that A&M, a little bit new to this. Yale has a lot of veteran players. There's a really good team coming out of the Ivy League, and they have done this before, and they are not afraid of you no matter who you are. So, Yale, big-time sleeper, big-time Cinderella potential for them and the Aggies, who need to do something because, hey, maybe it's the College World Series where you're right there and lose. And then you lose your coach to your biggest rival. Or it's a game where you have tons of opportunities in football to beat Texas, but you don't. Or you have more than a decade to improve your program to a place beyond Texas in every regard because you went to a stronger conference with more money and more exposure. And then Texas just joins it, and you're just right back where you started. The unluckiest team, perhaps, in the history of college athletics. Not to mention, not to say that they don't get in their own way, but if this happens to them and they lose to Yale like Auburn and Baylor have done in the past, they need to go, walk over a bridge with the troll that they answered the riddle wrong and get it right this time. Go to New Orleans and cast a voodoo spell, something, because this team is unlucky. If there's somebody's shoelace that's going to be untied, it's probably maroon and white. That's going to do it for the show. That's going to do it for the top 5. Tomorrow, we're at Big 12 Pro Days. Thursday, we're at Big 12 Pro Days. So we will see you then from Frisco.